What is going on? No Ceilings Nation. It's draft night. Finally, we are here. It's been a long journey to what the haters are describing as the worst draft class of all time, but not on our watch. We are going to have an absolute blast tonight. We're going to have the full panel of No Ceilings analysts on at one point to break it all down. But gentlemen, draft night has already been chaotic. And by that, I mean we've already gotten our first Woj bomb. Deni Avdija was traded from the Washington Wizards to the Portland Trailblazers for the 14th pick. Malcolm Brogdon, some other stuff, future picks. Nick, first reaction to the Wizards jumping back into the draft.
This is fascinating for the Wizards. I mean, I would think that a team that won 15 games last year might not want to trade one of their best young pieces, but, you know, they decided to move on from Deni. It'll be interesting to see, given that obviously they have the number 2 pick, if this is, you know, something where they want to pick 3 times in the first round. It'd be certainly an interesting way to go about the rebuild with 2, 14, and 26. But yeah, I mean, it'll be fascinating to see if they package those 2 picks, if Kyle Kuzma's on the move as well. Reportedly, there is a potential trade to the Sacramento Kings, my favorite team, the Sacramento Kings, at 13 for Kyle Kuzma. So there might be more Wizards moves coming in among all the other Woj bombs. But yeah, draft night started off with a bang. We're getting rolling here, boys.
Go ahead, Albert. What's your reaction?
I know sometimes I clear my throat and it seems like I'm trying to cut in, but in this case, it was just phlegm. Just saw Jeremy Wu tweeted. He was like, hey, watch out for the Wizards. They might be packaging those 2 later first round picks to move up in the lottery again. Obviously really interesting. The best tweet I've seen so far. And, you know, NBA draft, we're going to get a million different amazing tweets tonight. But believe it or not, Deni Avdija younger than Dalton Connect, which means he's probably significantly younger than Baylor Shireman. So
still decade and a half younger than Baylor Shireman.
Who we love, by the way. And who knows, could be making an appearance tonight, possibly on night 2. Some people, Lockdown Scout in chat says overpay for Deni, in my opinion. I think the future picks, we'll see what that's for, but I think that Deni is a really modern NBA wing. Like, he got way better last year on a descending contract. He is going to be super cheap as that cap goes up. I think it's a smart move for a team that kind of needs to get real talent on their roster. You know, like last year, they want to continue to maybe not be great, but, you know, Deni is not going to raise your ceiling to the point where all of a sudden they're going to be competing for the playoffs in the West, right? So I think, just really, really good stuff to get the night started and already make things chaotic. Shout out to Tankathon, who has already updated their website with that Wizards icon. Very interesting stuff. Nick, thank you for joining us for the opening segment. We will be back on together later on in the night, which I'm excited for both of our teams when we are there. So without further ado, we will be bringing on Tyler Rucker, late as always, to the biggest night of the year. Thank you for that.
No problem. Just had to leave work early without any permission. So basically risking it for No Ceilings. How we doing, boys?
You got to risk it to get the biscuit.
That's right.
Yes, you do.
That's right. Can I do something fun for us, guys? And, we're kind of...
I would love that.
This is a pregame show, right? We're trying to get people excited. What's more exciting and fun than me rattling off the top 10 picks from the 2000 NBA draft? Ready? I'm going to do this really quickly for us because I want to make a point, okay? Sure. Top 10 picks back in the 2000 NBA draft. Kenyon Martin, Stromile Swift, Darius Miles, Marcus Fizer, Mike Miller, DeMar Johnson, Chris Mim, unbelievable. Jamal Crawford at 8, Joel Prisbilla at 9, Keon Dooling at 10. Now, the point that I want to make here, I'm not saying that the 2024 class is going to be exactly like the 2000 NBA draft. The point that I am trying to make, though, is that in a year where we're looking at what people are perceiving as a weaker draft class, we're going to find guys. And this is a point that, Rucker, that you've made so eloquently in the last couple of months repeatedly, in that although we don't have a 1A marquee name superstar in this class, we know that there are going to be good players in this class. We know that there are going to be teams out there that have great scouts and great front offices that are going to find the diamonds in the rough. And we're going to find some really excellent players and walk away, 10 years from now or 24 years from now, realizing that some good players were drafted tonight. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Who could forget the 2000 draft when Kenyon Martin went first out of Cincinnati? And tonight, there are going to be some names, and we don't know, right? It could be Zachary Risachet, it could be Alexander Sarr. People may look back and be like, how did that person go first? However, we know that good players are going to come out of this draft. And so that's what makes tonight special. A lot is up in the air, a lot to be excited about, but also just we don't know. It's going to be great.
I think that's a really interesting point. That's a pretty rough top 10, in hindsight, right? Shout out to Jamal Crawford, though. Darius Miles, supposed to go to St. John's, didn't. Straight to the NBA, straight to Hollywood. Van Wilder, right, Rucker? Little cameo in Van Wilder.
Little cameo in Van Wilder.
Little knucklehead action. Yeah, so let's talk about it, fellas. The top of this class, rumored to be 1 and 2 lockdown. Zachary Risachet, we've been hearing, similar things behind the scenes. Alex Sarr at number 2.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about that, Rucker? Do we think that's exactly how it's going to play out?
You're never certain. We learned that lesson. What was that? Our first year in No Ceilings with the Paulo curveball.
Yeah.
So and until Silver's saying it out loud, I think everything's up in the air now. Betting odds, if you were one of those people, been heavy favorites for it to go Risachet and Sarr 1-2. I think we're kind of set in that way. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's been a lot of buzz about Klingon up top. I have a weird chill down my spine that could be a curveball, but I think everyone you talk to around the NBA seems like they're all in agreement that it's going to go 1-2, at least in that order. After that, some people I think have a little bit of debate, have a little bit of getting away from the consensus. But, for the top 2, it seems like it's going to be a little bit of a shocker if it's not Risachet and Sarr. Missed that and was not ready. That snuck up on me. Fantastic. What do we got?
Nick Claxton intends to sign a 4-year, $100 million deal to return to the Brooklyn Nets per. Whoa.
Wow.
Not sure how that affects the draft tonight.
Average annual value, $25 million per year for Nick Claxton. So
Is there just a point where you're a guy and you're like, hey, I'm going to free agency, and then the team throws that offer to you and you and your agent just look at each other and like, yeah, let's just stay here? I mean, I feel like Denny Avdia just got traded to Portland. Shout out Schmitz. Right. Like, we all understood when he re-signed because it was like, oh, he's getting a very nice contract. And you figure it out down the road. But that's a big number for Claxton. And I like him. That's just a huge number. But yeah, it's going to be interesting now.
Nick Claxton, a guy that many say has a little Alex Sarr in him. To bring it back around to the draft, I mean, if Nick Claxton's getting $25 million as a floor, Alex Sarr should be looking up and going, I think I can do that stuff. That's pretty good. How else are we feeling about some of these other guys? I know Jonathan Wasserman is saying that Dillingham Holland are the names right now that he thinks are potentially going to fall. Albert, should either or both of those guys be falling down a draft board like this?
I think so. Okay, first off with Holland, yes. Easy answer, yes. I feel like, and I get it. And there's been, I just want to say, Corey, this draft cycle, there's been so much incredible coverage from everywhere. I love what we do at No Ceilings, but I think everyone deserves a round of applause for just the insane amount of content that's out there, the insane amount of information that's out there. And I know a lot of people love Ron Holland. You just mentioned Wasserman. He's a big Ron Holland guy. I know he was on NBA TV last night making, a big point about how he thinks, Ron Holland's the best guy on his board, blah, blah, blah. I get it and I understand, and it all depends on how you're looking at him. But for me, I look at Holland and he's got a lot of work to do. I actually love what J. Kyle Mann said. He was on the Bill Simmons pod with Kevin O'Connor, and he was talking about how Ron Holland has a little bit of that like biggest kid in the schoolyard type of energy where, in high school, he was a little bit more further along physically, like his body was more mature. So he used that to his advantage and he put up a lot of shots and had a lot of the ball. And then, now, the competition's kind of catching up to him a little bit and he's lacking the finer details and he needs a little bit more fine tuning. And I think, Corey, even the point that you've been making recently where you kind of see him as a Corey Brewer type, I like that, right? If we simplify his role a little bit, and we don't look at Ron Holland through the prism of, he can be a 1A option and we're going to put the ball in his hands and he's going to make decisions for us. If we're not looking at him as a potential Jaylen Brown, then I think it becomes a different type of conversation, right? Then you can get excited about his outlook. Wow, what an incredible Ozempic. Gerald Wallace is incredible. Shouts to Presidente. He always does a great job with those. Like, last year, I think he's called Bryce Sensabaugh. I forgot what he said. It was something really funny though. But regardless, Corey, I think, and to your other point about Dillingham, I love Dillingham. I think I understand he's small. He weighed in at like 160 pounds, sure, but the thing about weight is you can add it. I can attest to that. Post marriage, I've gained some weight. It's all possible, right? Rob Dillingham's still young. He's going to be in the NBA. He's going to eat NBA food. He's going to gain weight. He'll be fine. The type of creation ability that he has, and also just straight up shooting that he can provide. I wouldn't let him fall, but I get it. Is my ultimate point.
Rucker, he came in at 165 pounds with a, I think, 6'2" or 6'3" wingspan, 6', 6'1" without shoes. Surprised by the fall that seemingly came after the measurements came out.
Yeah, a little bit. I get both sides of the fence, if you want to put it that way. I think we thought he was going to be a little bit taller. We always know, beginning of the year, we're very cautious of college website measurements. We always take those with a grain of salt. I feel like talking to you guys, even in Portland, the common thing we've been told from people around the league was very cautious about those measurements, especially him and Reed Shepherd came in at 164. I mean, that's light. It's really light. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to have to deal with the strength. It's something, we talk at No Ceilings all the time on the side about how it's almost underrated, like the physicality of the NBA. You think about it, but you don't realize like how vicious these guys are at the next level. So Rob's going to have to figure it out. But when you watch him, it's lightning in a bottle. I think he's fantastic with the pick and rolls and coming off screens. And, Albert, I listened to the same episode, Kyle Mann saying, if there's a guy in this class that could drop 40 as a rookie, it's going to be Rob. Like, he's electric. But I do think there's a lot of guys in this class where everyone might be freaking out because they're falling, but it's because they're very fit dependent when it comes to, like, even more than the draft's always fit, but those guys are such unique skills. Like, it's got to take the right organization, the right fit, the right system. So Rob's going to be lightning in a bottle. Some team at one point is going to be very excited about that in your rotation, but it just might come a little later off the board than we're thinking.
Going towards the back end of the first round, potentially, in the YouTube comments, we have Show Low Man. Any thoughts on Enrique Freeman going at the back end of the draft and what teams make the most sense for him? Rucker, I know you've kind of been a guy who's liked Enrique lately. I know Metcalf is big on him. Maxwell wrote about him earlier in the year. Do you think there's a chance he slips into the first round? Kristen Peak mentioned that on the pod that she did with you and Metcalf. How are you feeling about Enrique Freeman's rise?
Yeah, he seems like a little bit of a wild card tonight. I could see him getting up there. You hear fantastic stuff about his workouts, but it's also one of those where it was getting a lot of momentum and then it cooled down really quick. So I'm like, okay, has he just skyrocketed from like late second round to like right outside that first round? You hear a lot of good things. I think he could be a wild card. We've seen some crazy wild cards on draft night. Back when Memphis traded up for Santi Alderman, we were all like, "Whoa, that's crazy out of nowhere." So it wouldn't shock me because I think he's got the versatility, the size, the defense. If the shot's really impressing, that's been a question for scouts and evaluators. Like that was one of my questions when I first started watching him, and then you see him at the combine, it looked way better. So I think if he's really improving and showcasing that workouts, I think he could be a guy that kind of shocks us tonight.
Whoa is the exact text I got when Santi got chosen that night when Albert and I were in Brooklyn hanging out by Jalen Rose in a great suit that night. Albert, who do you think has a chance to come into the first round that maybe we aren't anticipating?
That's actually a really good question. I mean, just going off of, okay, we mentioned him at the top, a guy who has been, and Rucker, you've talked about it, right? He's been a real riser in this class, a guy that I think all of us are big fans of, Baylor Shireman from Creighton, a guy who, at the start of the draft cycle, people may have thought, okay, like second round, maybe, right? Maybe he goes in the 40s, 50s. That'll be a nice range for him. Shireman might end up going in the first round, right? He's a guy who's really been killing workouts, is what we've been hearing. And if we just talk about his game, big wings, got good size to him, great rebounder. I posted a video to Twitter yesterday, just a really, really good passer. He's great with the hit aheads, kind of like a Reed Shepherd, the way that they do that. Can actually run some pick and roll for you, can be a secondary ball handler. And obviously just shot the hell out of the ball. I think he shot like 87% from the free throw line as well. Just a really solid wing guy that a team in the 20s could easily look to and be like, yeah, let's add him to our rotation and he can be a seventh guy for us from day one. Just because of, the skill and all that. And also the fact that he's 23, almost 24. He'll be 24 in September. So a little bit of an older prospect, but a guy that you would feel comfortable kind of throwing in there. So could definitely see him going in the first round.
Can I give you guys a little bit of a wild Woj comment?
Please
Sure.
do.
Woj just, shout out Ignacio for sharing this. Woj just came on the air and said the Hawks have come down to two players, Zachary Ricochet and Reed Shepherd.
Yes. Chaos mock.
Chaos mock. Also, Reed Shepherd's on the screen, and he looks like his suit looks like he's going to go interview like on Wall Street. It's like a bright green.
Oh.
Just 100%. It's nice. It's just very loud. Love it. Definitely try to get a job straight out of college. Literally. Yeah, Reed would be crazy. I don't know if I buy it or if that's the last effort to someone come trade for us, but I love Woj. It's so fantastic.
Well, let's talk this Reed Shepherd situation through. What does this mean for the direction of their franchise? I mean, look, this to me, that is not a crazy take. Reed Shepherd is, my 1B to Donovan Clingan's 1A on my personal draft board. I would not begrudge any franchise for taking him in this particular draft. The guy shot 52% from three this year. He's the first college player to do that since, I believe, Mitch Richmond, which is a long time if you're not a middle-aged white guy. So the shots are going to be there all night. So
everybody knows that about us.
Which is we're going to get up as many as Reed Shepherd knocked in college. So I mean, look, what does that say about the direction that they're headed? Obviously, we think Jalen Johnson is probably a piece that they value going forward. Him and Reed, fine, you can make that work, right? But they have Trae Young, they have DeJounte Murray. You clearly can't build a team around Trae Young and a Reed Shepherd defensively. We saw how the struggle occurred at college level with Reed and Rob let alone, at the pro level when you have guys scheming for that every single night. What are we thinking, Albert, happens here? I mean, does that signal that is Trae on the move tonight?
I think so. First off, I weirdly have a lot of buddies who are Hawks fans, so I've been talking about this a lot recently. Even before Woj dropped that little tidbit of Reed potentially being in the conversation at 1, I think that's kind of been the smoke, right? That either Trae or DeJounte or both could be on their way out, right? And so if it's a situation where Atlanta looks at their roster and they go, you know what, we tried this with Trae. He took us to an Eastern Conference Finals. Nothing's happened since. Wow, Reed looks like he's early for Sunday service at church, is what he looks like.
That one was better than mine.
That's Easter Sunday. He's going to be giving out the he's going to pass around the offering basket, is what Reed Shepherd's going to be doing. It's fantastic. But Corey, back to your question. I just feel like, it's maybe they feel like they've hit the end of the road, and with both those guys. And we've heard a little bit about, chemistry stuff and off the court stuff and, things in the locker room. So maybe Atlanta looks at this as an opportunity to, press the hard reset button on the team, blow things up, start over with a guy like Reed Shepherd, a guy that we've compared to a Mark Price, Alonzo Ball, whatever, and say, let's start over. As you mentioned, Corey, the Reed and Jalen Johnson combo could be really exciting. And, maybe they start looking closer at their own players and realize AJ Griffin's a really good player and start giving him more burn. Then things could be really interesting there. So, Corey, just to go back to your question, I think anything's on the table. I don't think they necessarily have to make that trade tonight. They can wait things out a little bit. But if they do take Reed, I think the writing might be on the wall.
I agree. I think that would be the most chaotic way we can start tonight, and that would truly, truly melt my heart if that's what happened. What is the most chaotic thing, Rucker, that could happen in this draft tonight on night 1 of our 2-night extravaganza?
Ron Holland at 1? No, I think Reed at 1 would be a fireworks going off immediately. We'd all be like, what the
Bronny
heck
to the
now
Sixers?
is going to happen? Yeah, Bronny to the Sixers. Bronny going to the lottery somehow. Edie at 3.
Wow. I love that.
The funny thing is we're going to say more of these, and there's a chance some of those happen. I'm not saying the ones we just said, but there's going to be a chance we're going to multiple times tonight be like, what the heck just happened? I think this could be one of the most enjoyable drafts we ever watched because no one knows what the heck's going to go on. Rob's been mentioned everywhere. I've had an exec say 5 out of nowhere, and I've checked in on that 4 times. I'm like, are you sure? Are you feeling well? And he's like, oh no, I'm sticking with my prediction. I was like, okay. Now he didn't tell me what teams would be there, but he did say 5. I just think there's a lot of chaos that could happen tonight. The Reed thing is very interesting. And we're also forgetting about Kobe Buffkin. Blow it up and let those two play together. Have some fun. I love that idea. So,
good point.
I can't figure out if Atlanta's just desperate and being like, we really like Ricochet, but not at the first pick. So they're just trying to be like, could someone please just let us pick 3rd or 4th?
That's how I feel. I love Ricochet, but not at the first pick.
Same.
Normal year, if I got Ricochet 9, 10, I'd be pretty intrigued.
Yeah, 13.
I don't want to say excited, but I'd be intrigued.
The most
3D guy?
The most fun outcome with Ricochet would be the Spurs looking at the Knicks and being like, oh, they had an idea here, getting all the Nova guys. And then the Spurs being like, let's take all the French guys. And they go Sarr and Ricochet and Wembanyama. And they're like, the secret here is the whole starting 5 is only going to speak in French. So the other teams have no idea what the hell we're doing on the court.
Tony Parker taking over for Papa's coach.
There it is.
That's fantastic.
I love that. Albert, how are we feeling? Literally right after the stream ends.
Yeah.
The New York Knicks acquire Mikal Bridges of Villanova fame. I mean, I'm psyched about it.
Mhm.
How we feeling?
I think like scientifically, I still can't feel my face. I'm really excited. I don't even know how to put words together, but I'll try. I think it's such a weird, fun idea to just be like, hey, these guys won multiple titles in college. Let's just put them on the same team in the NBA. I love the fact that Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges combined make less money than Bradley Beal. That makes me really happy. I just love the roster. And I love the fact that right before the draft, we re-signed OG Anunoby as well. And we're going to have him for the next 5 years too. And it's a lot of exciting stuff, Corey. So as a Knick fan, this is probably the best we've been and the most excited I've been since 1999. So I'm feeling amazing.
As a New Yorker, this is the most excited I've been since 1999. I
We
think
got
this
a
is
full New York podcast here, or
We do.
full New
Let's
York
go.
stream.
Look at us.
just a bunch of Mets fans hanging out on the stream.
Whoa.
Absolutely not. How dare you?
Shout out Queensbridge.
That one I'll take.
Man, no, I think it's super cool. If they don't sign Ryan Arcidiacono in some way, we riot.
Yeah.
He's getting
Chris
a two-way.
Jenkins.
Either a
Omari
two-way or a spot
Spellman.
on the coaching staff.
Yeah, maybe a spot on the coaching staff. Like Arcidiacono he was on the Knicks last year at a certain point. So super cool. But just looking at, the direction of the league, they got to go through the Celtics.
Yeah.
Ton of wings. Do you think that the way that the Celtics have been able to play 5 out and throw out a bunch of length, and do you think that is going to impact how teams draft tonight? Because there are a lot of guys who can't shoot in this draft.
Yeah, well, that's a different problem.
It's a copycat league, right? Like obviously, the last couple of years, the conversation's been like, how do we prepare for Jokic after the Celtics won? Now it's like, okay, how do we get a bunch of wings and guards that can guard multiple positions and shoot a lot of threes, right? And so, but Corey, considering all that, this might not be the best draft to do that and to try to figure that out. However, there are some options. And if we're looking at some wings that can shoot it from outside, that can go fill it up, we have some guys like that. We have some guys who can guard on the perimeter. We already mentioned a guy like Risa Shea. Have to mention a guy like Dalton Connect, who can really, really score and put the ball in the bucket. The defensive side, he's going to have to work on, of course. So there are a lot of different options, right? Maybe even a guy like Devin Carter, Corey, a guy that you and we really love. When we did our pod, we kind of raved about him for like an hour and a half. Maybe he goes a little bit higher than people expect because of what he offers on the defensive end and his rebounding as a guard and his improvement as a shooter with a little bit of playmaking as well. And just, the overall ethos and energy that he plays with, I think is excellent too. So there are a lot of guys that I think could potentially get you going in that direction is what I would say.
How high is too high for Devin Carter?
I mean, I'd say 5 is too high. I'd say 6 is too high. But I think I'm also the lowest on Devin Carter of our group, which is not to say that I'm low on him, but, comparatively speaking.
I don't think 5's too high.
I'd take him at 5. Detroit could use him. Charlotte could use him at 6. Yeah.
Is 1 too high?
1's too high for almost every player in this draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that said, I mean, how we feeling about Kristen Peak giving a little breadcrumb that Charlotte might be interested in Tijan Salon at 6?
I mean, it's the mystery box idea, right? Like with Salon, you have the spot up shooting that I'm willing to buy. You have the size and athleticism that I'm willing to buy. And other than that, it's just, if you're going to take a swing on somebody in this class, he might have one of the higher theoretical upsides. So, I mean, it makes sense in that regard. But again, it's the same sort of logic, right? Of, I would say that Charlotte needs players who they can guarantee are at least going to be something more than they would need to take that bet on Salon. But I mean, it makes sense from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte better take him, or else the Spurs are going to take him. He's French, so I mean, they got to handle their business here because he'll be in San Antonio if not. But with Salon 6'10", 7'1.5", almost 7'2" wingspan, the guy plays really hard. We'll see with the shooting, right? In our draft guide, prospect chemistry for him is really interesting. We have Michael Porter Jr., Kevin Knox, and Tobias Harris. So that's a real mixed bag of guys there, especially the Kevin Knox shout out, probably being the nadir by a million miles. But Michael Porter Jr. is there as well, right? But the thing with Salon though is I think defensively with him, I think he's just going to be way better than Michael Porter Jr. ever has, in my opinion, just because he has the effort. He's got that dogged mentality for him on the defensive side of the ball. So if Charlotte wants to go that route, I get it. I could see it. I don't know if I would go that route, but it wouldn't be the worst idea, I think.
But how good is he at Fortnite?
God. Hey, if Luka Doncic can be a ranked Overwatch player, then the sky's the limit for any of these guys gaming wise.
I think that I saw something about Bub Carrington today saying that he could be a grandmaster in chess.
Wow.
Is that more or less relevant than Fortnite? I'd say probably more, but I mean, it's a close race.
I think if you're breaking down the skills you need in Fortnite to be an elite Fortnite guy, it's probably like hand-eye coordination. Right?
That seems pretty important for basketball, all things
sure.
considered.
Sure. But the processing of a chess grandmaster. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a ton about chess, but seems intriguing, seems like a good sign from a basketball intelligence perspective. Shout out to everybody watching the No Ceilings 2024 NBA Draft Show live in the chat. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 10,000 subscribers. Maybe we can get to 10,000 subscribers tonight. We do that, chat? If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. This is going to be a terrific night. How long are we expecting the draft to go on for? Because the 2-night draft went on for what seemed like 7 hours last year. But now that we have a 1-night draft, how are we feeling about the pacing of it? Are we excited about that?
I'm really excited, Corey, because after last year's draft, I fell asleep on the floor. Is literally what happened. Not a joke. I fell asleep on the floor in my room. So I'm hoping it moves a lot faster. 3 hours? What do you guys think? 2 hours? 3 hours? I'm not sure.
I think 3 is probably close. If I'm remembering correctly, last year our stream was 5 hours and 12 minutes. So I think somewhere less than that, probably.
Dear God.
All right. Well, it appears that we are going to swap out now. The draft is about to start. So I believe Maxwell, Ignacio,
Steven.
and I'm not sure who else is on.
Maxwell, Ignacio, Steven.
Okay. Steven's not here. So Nick, I guess you're staying on until Steven or is Steven
back in, coach.
here? Steven is here. Okay, guys. Thank you for watching the pre-draft show. We'll be back later on. So welcome to the stage, Maxwell Baumbach.
I'm so fired up. I'm so excited for the draft.
Ignacio in the building, our international superstar, and Stephen Gillespie. I bid you all adieu. Not yet.
All right. Well, fellas, here we go.
What's up, family?
I am beyond excited. We got Adam Silver on the podium as we speak. So we are about to head into the first pick here. The Celtics are currently getting booed for the crime of winning a championship. How are everybody's
Probably
vibes?
by their own fans.
How's everybody feeling tonight?
I'm excited. We're finally here. It's been seemingly an eternal draft cycle. There's been a lot of smoke, lot of smoke screens on the past week, so it's awesome to finally get, whatever we get tonight. We got here, so it's awesome.
Steven,
I'm excited. I'm excited, guys. I've been a part of No Ceilings for a little while now. First night getting to cover the draft in quite some time because of the nature of my day job. I'm super excited. Atlanta is now on the clock. Like, we are officially in the midst of an NBA draft, and I could not be more thrilled. And I'm thrilled to be joined by all of y'all. Shout out to Corey, Albert, Nick, and Tyler Rucker for holding it down through the pre-show. They're consummate professionals. They're getting ready for the rest of the night. I'm stoked.
It's so interesting. I'm so glad, Ignacio, that you brought up just like how long this draft cycle feels. Like it feels like an eternity ago. When you think about just all the different narratives that we have run through this year, from like Uzelis and Holland being considered, Isaiah Collier being considered the number one guy, to Zachary Risache almost being written off after a poor FIBA performance. Guys like Omaha Ballou, Scotty Middleton, guys that we thought would be in the mix tonight, going back to school, the surprises, the Reed Shepherds, the Bub Carringtons. It's been a journey, and I'm just so excited that we're finally at the culmination of it. I'm excited to see what happens next year, but we're going to pump the brakes. We're going to pump the brakes on next year. Right now, we got the Hawks.
One draft at a time.
Exactly. Ignacio, who would you go with at number one here? I'm a SAR guy personally. I've been banging the table for SAR number one. Understand that might not be the way they go, given it seems like he might not want to play in Atlanta, but what would you go with here?
This is one of the most wide open drafts I think we have seen in quite a while. Somebody did in Twitter did a compilation of all the big boards from the mainstream sites to the draft Twitter scout
distillery. Yeah,
exactly. And they found 11 different guys at number one. Last year we had one guy. That was it. This year, 11 different guys, and you get it. But the team that is at the top, that is Atlanta, might have a different process for the decision and a different thought process on where they are as a franchise, what player fits not only the current roster, but where do they think they go. And so I feel like the best prospect on my board is Alex Sarr. It has been for quite a while, and he's at the top of our collective board in No Ceilings. But it's true that Sarr might not have the instant impact for a team that might consider themselves to be ready to make some noise in the playoffs, because they are 3 years removed from an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. That seems like forever ago, but it was just 3 years. They have their franchise guy in Trae Young, or so we think, because there's been some smoke about him getting traded. But if they go with Sarr, it might signal that
the phone is being hung up. They made the call. They're excited. They're clapping. I think it's Risache. Like, they haven't got Alex Sarr in there at all. I haven't seen anything yet on my feed, but they're very excited. You got Landry Fields, Kyle Korver.
Yeah, Kyle Korver's in there, looking handsome as ever.
That handsome devil. I think it's Risache. Like, do you think that I wrote about this for our most recent mock draft, but like, you think just Landry Fields and Kyle Korver are like just more comfortable scouting wings as opposed to like big men or guards or something like that? Like, you think that plays a little bit of a factor?
It could be. I think ultimately what they're going to look for is going to be revealing one way or another. I think if they go with a guy like Klingon, it says, hey, we're trying to build around this core. If they go with Risache, I think it kind of sends the same message that, like, we like this guy, he's malleable. But I think if we get like a Reed Shepard here, it's a true kind of blow it up.
It's because of the green suit too. Like, that has to be.
Yeah, Reed Shepard looks like the guy who would be most likely, if anyone in this draft class, to like tell his friends he's not allowed to watch Spike TV at their house. Like, he's like, that's kind of the look.
Wow.
My parents don't let me watch scary movies.
Yeah,
that was specific. That was so specific.
I'm just saying, if we're going off of vibes though, in the green room, there's a lot of smiling Risache like head cuts, and then there's Alex Sarr just kind of like look like he's the inevitable is like being prolonged for him. The pick is in. There's a big delay.
I was going to
People
say
are-
the delay from the pick is into now has been wearing on me. This has been as long as the draft's like, oh, we got a guy chugging a beer. Good for him.
Yeah, chugging a beer, and now they're showing Ricochet. A lot of French hats being worn
pretty
by Atlanta
stoic
Hawks.
is Ricochet. Making me wonder if perhaps he has not been tipped off to being the pick, or if maybe he's just a reserved guy. I don't know anything about him personally, but interesting.
Maybe a little bit of coaching, a little bit of, hey, don't make it so obvious that we know that you're going to be the number one pick.
Act like you've been there before.
Yeah, come on, man.
I am fascinated to see, because the direction that this goes could really shake things up the rest of the night. And there were the rumors too that they had like Modest Bezelis in pretty late in the process too. Like, I really enjoy the sort of suspense that we have going on with the pick here. We're getting a replay of them calling in the pick.
What are they laughing at? What are they laughing at right now on their video? They're just pointing and laughing right now.
I can't believe they're back on the screen. This is wild.
It is very wild. How about that merch, guys? The shirts that Corey just put up today. That's pretty sick. Oh, here we go. Silver.
Okay.
Silver is on the podium. I have it muted, so I can't hear anything, but I can't read lips either. Silver. I'm so stoked. I don't know. Oh, it's Ricochet. Ricochet with the number one pick. Makes sense, right? That's what the intel was pointing to, and I think that at our most recent mock draft, like what we think's gonna happen. How did that work out? Like this pretty much par for the course, right? Like this is what all the intel that the team has gotten had been pointed to. I mean,
so and let's talk about Zachary Ricochet. So we've probably got people tuning in that may not have been as deep in the weeds throughout this process. Zachary Ricochet, kind of plug and play wing, 6'9", did not test super well at the combine. Not the greatest self-creator, really struggled with turnovers when he operated ball screens this season, but a really good shooter, 39% across a massive sample in playing pro in the French League this past season. Really good team defender, flies all over the court, really knows where to be rotationally. Steven, how do you feel about his game and just kind of how he fits in with the Atlanta Hawks? He's just a guy you can kind of put on every team and be fine, but some people question the upside. Where do you sort of stand on that?
Well, I'll do a touch pass real quick to Ignacio. I'd love to get his takes. I just think that if you're looking at the current construction of the roster, you got two good guards, you have big men who can't stretch the floor, and you want to get Jalen Johnson to continue to be dynamic around the basket. Ignacio, I think that this makes sense, just opening that floor for their big men, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is the pick that makes, in terms of fit, it makes the most sense because I think Ricochet is a player that can fit in pretty much any roster because of that combination of size and ability to make an impact without the ball in his hands. So for a team that already has a franchise guy who is the on-ball creator in Trae Young, the best thing that you can give him is somebody who's going to make an impact without the ball in his hands. He's not going to demand many possessions. And also, that's the best possible fit for Ricochet because the biggest limitation has been, like you mentioned and like Max mentioned, creating for himself, especially handling the ball. He's kind of a rigid ball handler who struggles to get by opponents on his own. And he, in his current team in JL Burg, they didn't really give him many like isolations or even pick and roll possessions. So it's a fit not only for the Hawks, but probably the best potential fit for Ricochet, going somewhere that has multiple ball handlers, who has another offensive option at the wing or the forward position in Jalen Johnson. And so he's going to be able to make an impact without the ball in his hands and also defensively for a team like the Hawks who struggled defensively all over the floor last year. He's going to be probably one of, obviously it's going to take time and getting accustomed to the NBA and the skins and etc. But he's going to make an important impact on that end of the floor for the Hawks as well.
So, Maxwell, I want to turn this to you. We got 3.5 minutes for the Washington Wizards on the clock right now. Sarr was on top of boards for a long portion of the season. He's available now for the Wizards. There has been kind of no secrets that where he would prefer to go. Given the trades that happened today, does this change your mind on who goes number 2?
No, I think Sar still goes number 2. I think if anything, there's just a little bit more wing space for him to operate, especially with the rumors that he would prefer to play at the power forward position as opposed to the center spot. This is actually kind of a little bit more ideal for him in a way. It's one less, jumbo forward in the lineup. So you still got Kyle Kuzma there. You still have Bilal Coulibaly. So there's still a lot of guys with size on this roster on the wing. But it's just kind of one less guy in his way. It's kind of another nod to like, hey, we're rebuilding a little bit, which to me is the move anyway in Washington. Sure. Like, you're not getting that star in this draft. Let's kind of clear the deck a little bit. Don't want to say ensure that you're kind of at the top of the board next year, because there's no way to really do that given the new lottery rules. Look at the Detroit Pistons. But I think it's just a nice little resetting of the deck, and I think you still go with Sar here. What about you, Ignacio?
Yeah, I think I have a question. Obviously, I think the fit with Sar is in Washington is just perfect, because I think the two main needs for Washington coming into today were lead ball handler, somebody who's going to make plays for others, and rim protector. I just don't think that the current configuration of the roster, playing Marvin Bagley at the center that many minutes, is really an avenue to win basketball games. So, of course, Washington is here for the long run. I don't expect them, unless they make like a massive or maybe like 3 massive moves, I don't expect Washington to be competing next year. So they are building for 3 years to 4 years from now. And so maybe they're thinking about Cooper Flagg next year.
It is Alex Sar.
Okay.
Keep going. Yeah, keep going with it.
No, so makes a lot of sense, man.
I think Sar is great, but I think also he's going to need time. I think he's going to make an impact for the Wizards, but I don't think that impact is going to be like deep enough in his first year that they are going to compromise their long-term view of the rebuilding they are putting together. And I think like my question before this pick for you guys was going to be if you think that the trade they recently made and the addition of Malcolm Brogdon was going to change a bit of the strategy or the needs for the Wizards. In this pick, I don't think it changed the strategy, but it might be a good question for the picks 14 and 26 that they got now.
Yes. Yeah, I think it does. And Malcolm Brogdon's had loads of injury issues over the years. So I don't want to say that you like, oh, well, we don't need a guard because we'll have Malcolm Brogdon. Like, you might only get 30 games out of Malcolm Brogdon. Like, you don't know. But I do think it takes off some of the immediate pressure to get a guard contributor at those spots. So perhaps if a Nikola Topic is on the board at 14, well, at least we've got one other guy who can play those guard minutes in year one if that's the direction that you want to go. So I think from that standpoint, the calculus of things does change a little bit. So that's something to take into consideration. What about you, Steven? Or is the Avdia move, is that changing how you're looking at things at all?
I mean, I guess the versatility and maybe you sell him year one that we're not going to be competitive. We'll try you out, at the 4, kind of that ingratiation stage for him for the Washington Wizards. But I don't think that long term that he's probably going to be a 4, maybe in the way that Tim Duncan was the power forward for the San Antonio Spurs. Maybe some minute percentages in certain rotations he's at the 4, but the majority of the game he plays the 5. I just think that what we've seen in the NBA and what we've seen to be successful with so many different versatile big men is that even if you're not the greatest rebounder, right? Even if you're not the greatest screen setter, if you have kind of this malleable, versatile skill set that you can bring to the NBA, I think that this is a good play for the future. I think that with Denny Avdia being moved out, it opens up that versatility, right? Kyle Kuzma could still be on the move too, even further solidifying Sar at the 4. My question is, if Sar's playing the 4, who's playing the 5, right? We might not have the answer to that question until maybe even their 3rd pick in this draft, depending on what shakes out for the rest of this draft night.
Yeah, that's going to be something interesting, probably to keep an eye on, almost more so in free agency. I wonder, unless they want to go big. Like, would you consider like a Zach Edey at 14 if he's there? You know what I mean, and just go massive.
Well, in our latest exercise that we did, we had them getting Sar too, and then the last pick, or their last pick, which is I believe 26, we had them getting Kyle Filipowski. And I think that that's pretty interesting because, I mean, that's like a nod to the 5-out system that we've seen be successful for the Boston Celtics this year in their championship run, with the Oklahoma City Thunder being the number 1 team in the Western Conference and pushing to the conference semifinals in that same conference. I think that if you're looking for the rebuild, you're looking at potential players in next year's draft. If you can grab 2 players that have a legit shot to contribute in a 5-out system this year and build on that and have 2 guys like that on rookie scale contracts, that's like a pretty interesting strategy for a team. And Maxwell, we talked with Keith Smith about the value of getting these picks right, and how Boston was able to get 2 forwards to kind of propel themselves into championship status. Maybe the move is that you target big men who can dribble, pass, shoot, and you have a couple of them. And that's like now the market inefficiency, so to speak, and like drafting and what to prioritize.
I'm gonna not push back, but add a bit to it, to the Sar playing the 4 or the 5. I've been saying from day one that I think the way to maximize his value, no matter what position or roles he plays offensively, I think defensively he needs to be your rim protector, because that's where he's been adding the most value. He has the measurements to do so. The strength is not there, but I think that frame can fill out, especially on an NBA strength and conditioning program. But I think the main value for him is going to be being your primary rim protector, blocking shots. If you can put him next to somebody, maybe a bigger 4 or somebody at the 5 who's maybe not as athletic, but can be a better rebounder and a better like post presence just because of his strength. I think he can do some damage as well as a help side defender. But I think the rim protection is pretty much what's going to keep him on the floor from day one. So no matter what he plays offensively, I think defensively he's a 5.
Yep. He had the second highest block rate of qualified players in the NBL last season. So that is a real skill for him. And I think it's what differentiates him from other like quote unquote switch bigs, is a lot of bigs. It's like, oh yeah, he can switch down. And like a lot of times they like to switch because they're not going to protect the rim. So that's a Houston's big part of it. But we've got Houston's
pick is in now. So I think the popular opinion across all fronts is Reed Shepherd, right? I think that he makes sense. They need floor spacing desperately. Even if like I'm probably like the lowest on him, quote unquote low on him. I just don't have him like number 3 on my board. I have him a little bit further back. It's hard to doubt the fit though with Houston. Like the fit makes so much sense. And we have Adam Silver taking the podium right now. Very interested to see where this goes.
And it is Reed Shepherd.
Okay.
Houston Rockets here. Like I said, I love the pick. Reed is number 3 on my board here. I love the game. He shot 52% from 3 in college, which is absurd.
It's pretty good.
Not guys that shoot that high of a percentage. But what makes Reed even more interesting, I think, is the volume and versatility of that shooting. Exceptional range, very good pulling up, very good off the catch, very good in transition. He can run into it. He can do all sorts of things to put the ball in the basket from beyond the arc. But also a good rebounder for a guard, which is a really important indicator of NBA success. Believe it or not, for the guard position, you don't see a lot of guards succeed in the NBA. There are poor rebounders at lower levels, but absurd defensive production, 4.6 steal percentage, 2.5 block rate. Like those are some elite, like Bruce Brown kind of college levels in terms of shot blocking and steals. 2.5 steals per game, 0.7 blocks. Exceptional stuff from the guard position. He is always going to have size limitations. He is 6'2". He's got like a 6'3.5" wingspan. He's got some good strength to him, but the stride length, it's going to be a little bit short. There's going to be guys that are quicker than him when he's trying to stay in front of the ball. but within a team concept, he is going to cause chaos. He gets off the floor exceptionally quickly. He is always a step ahead of the game. Phenomenal transition passer. Good pick and roll playmaker, even if he doesn't quite have the speed to punish certain coverages the way you might like. I love Reed Shepherd. I think there is a really high level of potential here, but an exceptionally safe floor given the shooting, feel, and defensive production. Ignacio, how do you feel about Reed Shepherd?
Yeah, just in terms of fit, I just love the fit for Houston because you have two young guys who need the ball in their hands to score. One of them is Şengün, the other is Jabari. So you add Reed, who's a guard, but he doesn't need the ball to be effective, and so you can put him on the ball, you can put him off the ball, and I think the versatility that Reed gives Houston is just really valuable. And also, I think Houston is so loaded in a way with young talent, and not loaded, but they have a ton of depth and talent across the board. And so I think for us, I think projecting this pick, we had that limitation of they don't have like a glaring need that they have. But the fit was more of they have a front office full of smart people, full of people who liked not the analytics only in a numbers sense, but likes to really think about the draft. They hired a ton of smart people that we all know. So I think the fit for Reed Shepherd was like, okay, they are a smart front office. Smart front offices would love Reed Shepherd. And so they did.
Steven, I'm going to turn to you here. San Antonio on the clock. Who are you eyeing if you're the Spurs with this pick?
Yeah, at 4, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you believe into kind of like the vibes or like what's being put out there in the pre-draft process, and not only that, but like some of the fits that these players are wearing. If you've seen Stephen Castle and what he's wearing, it looks very, kind of silver and black a little bit. So I think that Castle is probably the likely pick. I just think that he makes a ton of sense. They have no shortages of paths that they can go down with Victor Wembanyama. If they want to open it up and be 5 out, they can. If they want to have like a slashing wing who is a tenacious defender, who is a good decision maker, who has just as much upside as anybody in this class to improve offensively and with the jumper, I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to go with the Steph Castle, because if you look at who the Spurs have declared to be safe, obviously the alien is safe, but also Devin Vassell. So if you got Wemby, you got Vassell, go ahead and get a guy who in basketball shoes on the court playing basketball, he's going to be about 6'7". He's just a dog. He plays in a very smart, complicated scheme. A lot of people make it seem like the scheme that he played in at UConn made things easy for him. I think if you're in like that multiple read option kind of a system that UConn plays, you have to be highly intelligent. I don't think that anybody can go out there and just make an open play. Like it seems like the conversation has been reductive in that manner. He's obviously very intelligent. I think that even though the conversation is like, is he not a point guard? I think that even if he's not like a full blown point guard, maybe you trust him in like a Chris Middleton type of way as a ball handler. If all things hit right, someone who you do trust to make good passes, you're not afraid of him to put the ball on the ground and make a play.
And we've got the pick in from San Antonio here. I've been a little bit leery of Castle. I just worry about the shot with him relative to his position. It's something he struggled with. He's been a little bit gun shy from long range, but he is a phenomenal on-ball defender. The feel is there. And like you mentioned, Stephen, like when you're a San Antonio here, I don't want to say it gives you an opportunity to play it safe with your draft picks when you have Victor Wembanyama and a malleable shooter like a Devin Vassell, but it does put you in a position to kind of breathe a breath of fresh air and not get too cute with it. You don't have to overreach.
Right.
You don't have to try to do anything crazy. You don't have to swing on a guy that you think, really good chance he might stink. You kind of get to build around those players and have the freedom to do that. So really excited to see who San Antonio ends up going with this pick. The pick is allegedly in. We still don't know who the pick is. We've got the Steph Castle graphic up on the screen, so I think that's the vibes. That's been the vibes all week, is that Castle's probably the
yeah, there's probably a lot of whispering going on right now within the green room. A lot of caps being tipped to Steph and Castle. We see the Spurs are in their room right now, anxiously awaiting for the rest of the world to see who they have selected. Very stoic demeanors on all of their faces. Ignacio, we have Adam Silver coming to the podium. Where are you at with who they pick?
I think if they take Castle, which is what we assume they would be doing, I think it definitely makes sense because Castle, I think,
It's
can
Castle.
work.
Castle's in.
Okay, nice. So he
Now,
can
why does
work
that
it-
make sense?
I think he can work in two ways. There's been a lot of talk about Castle seeing himself as a point guard. So, and the Spurs have shown a willingness to give the ball to players, especially this season. They had Jones, who is a traditional point guard, but
Right.
also Sohan ran the offense at some point. So you're in an early stage of rebuilding. Yes, you have Victor. He will want to speed up the process because he wants to win, but you can give Castle the ball the first year, and if he's a point guard, you're gonna know about it pretty soon, and you might have found a jumbo-sized point guard of the future in Castle. And if he's not the point guard of the future, he can contribute in so many other ways. Defensively,
I
with his
agree.
size, with his playmaking. The question is always going to be the shot, I think.
Yep.
And I think we saw this a bit with Minnesota in the early years of Karl Anthony Towns, where they would bring or they would select players who couldn't shoot, and they will say themselves, oh yeah, but we have a five that can shoot. And then they realize that they surrounded him with all of guys who can't really shoot. So that's a thing that if it becomes a trend and we end up like, oh, we got Basal, we got Wembanyama, they can cover for the lack of shooting, you'll end up with a bunch of non-shooters. So limit yourself to one non-shooter per draft, and we're all good, I guess.
The other thing that I really like about Castle, and I say this as somebody who's been a little bit lower on him, is that he is very physically strong coming to the league. He's already 210 pounds. Like, he is already NBA wing size between the height and the wingspan. Like, so many times I think guys will come in and they'll struggle because like their build is a defender or a wing defender or a lockdown guy, and they come in and they just don't have the body or the toughness or the mentality, but really just the physicality to come in and compete right away. And that's going to be something that Castle has in his back pocket. Nothing else. And yeah, like, you can have your concerns about the shooting, but if nothing else, he's going to be a guy who can come in and compete in regular season games based on the field, based on the IQ, based on the handle, and based on how well he's going to perform defensively, both as an on-ball stopper and within a team concept. And that's going to hopefully give him the runway to grow and fill out his game. And because he does impact the game in a variety of ways, he is a guy that may go on to have a successful career, either as a low volume, efficient 3-point shooter, or as a guy who can be a subpar 3-point shooter. And I think you look at a guy even like Alex Caruso and the growth he's seen as a 3-point shooter so far down the road, just because he's had the runway to get those reps at NBA speed because of the impact that he makes on the other end of the floor. We've got Detroit on the clock. I'm a big Modest Pizelis guy. I was pounding the table for
Since
him
when?
yesterday. I
You
love
shook
Modest.
up your board, Maxwell.
It's 6'9.5", the way he defends multiple positions, the way that he was probably the top shot blocking forward in the G League last year, 44% in the mid-range in the G League last year, effective finisher. I think he just knows how to play the game. I think the shot is something that is going to take a while, but I think you look at a guy who just returned a lottery pick and a couple other things for the Wizards, Denny Avdia. You can be patient with those guys because just being a 6'9.5" and knowing how to play basketball is all you need to stay on an NBA floor a lot of the time and take your time to figure out everything else. I love his confidence as a shooter. I think he's going to get there in time, and I think he's worth the investment. But if I'm Detroit, I also need shooting desperately. I would not fault them for going after a Dalton Connect in this spot or someone in that vein. I wouldn't fault them for going after a Devin Carter just to get some more defense and a proven reliable vet type out there. But what are you guys leaning to here with Detroit?
I think for Detroit, Maxwell and Ignacio, they have 2.5 minutes left on the clock from the stream that I'm watching right now. This is where I think that we might start see some trade backs, right? Like, I wouldn't rule that out, right? Like, there's some kind of smoke coming out of that, at the top of the day that Detroit might be interested in trading back, especially if they value the shooting. Some of the shooters that are higher on boards right now still aren't quite within this number 5 range. Are there any players like a Portland who might be interested in trading up based on what we've seen to get someone that they like? There's a teams like Memphis or Oklahoma City who might try to trade up to get a Donovan Clingan who is still on the board, and by all accounts is a lot of people's best player available. But if I'm picking for Detroit, I think that the 5th pick overall is not too high for a Devin Carter. I think that he's a guy that if you're wanting to inject new life into this franchise, you got a new general manager, getting new coach. You want to finally do something to help Cade. You bring in someone who can take the tougher backcourt defensive assignment. You get someone who shot almost 38% in college basketball, who of all the players that we have talked about so far tonight was the highest scoring player on a team too. And I feel like that has kind of been under discussed, but the pick is in. Ignacio, who do you think that the Pistons are taking here?
I think from the players we've mentioned, I love the idea of Buselis. I don't know if I love Buselis to play right now, but the idea of what Buselis can become in 2 to 3 years is definitely the most enticing when you consider that, Cade and Jaden Ivey might be the backcourt of the future for them. And so you need somebody who contributes defensively, but also has some handle ability, some scoring ability. And the shot didn't come around this year, but it did at some point in high school. So if you can afford one more year of suspect spacing to, really bring out the value and let Buselis adapt to the NBA, I think you definitely should, because I think the upside is definitely there. I would prefer him over a player like, let's say, a Dalton Connect, who would help the Pistons immediately, but I don't know how much he fits with that timeline of,
for sure,
being competitive in 3 to 4 years. Now, is this what the, decision makers in Detroit call it, GM, ownership, etc.? Is this what they think? Yeah, at that point, I don't think anybody knows really.
I think with the amount of time that the pick has been in, Maxwell, and they showed...
We should have that shortly. And just real quick as well, Woj just on TV, he was mentioning that a number of teams are trying to move up for Donovan Clingan.
There we go.
He mentioned Memphis and said that Charlotte could also be fielding some calls. So we are simply waiting for the pick to reach the podium.
I just...
Do you have it on your screen?
No, I spoiled my pick.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I am still waiting for it to come up on my screen here. I've had the graphic for quite some time, so we're waiting it out.
I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not looking at Woj. I'm not looking at Shams.
All right, here we go. We got Silver on the podium here.
I think it's a trade. If I have to just go off of vibes alone, I have no idea.
Ron Holland from the G League Ignite, number 5. Put the rumors of the Ron Holland fall to rest. He is the number 5 pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Ron Holland from the G League Ignite, one of the most disruptive defenders in this class. 2.3 steals per game, 0.9 blocks per game, a relentless defensive playmaking motor. Offensively, there are some questions. He scored almost 20 points per game in the G League this past season, was 46% from the field, got to the rim like crazy, but struggled mightily from three-point range, only 24% on the long ball. If the long ball comes around, it's a lot to like, but for a team that struggled tremendously with shooting, a really precarious and fascinating fit.
There's a level in which it makes sense, which is that Holland was the number 1 guy coming out of high school. And me watching him at Duncanville, there's definitely something there. He had a level of versatility, whether that was, getting to the rim, making plays for teammates on the move, and also like being a really great defensive disruptor, at least at the high school level. So it makes sense when you consider his high school pedigree and when you consider his athletic tools and his athleticism and the way to, put pressure on the rim. Does it make sense right now for a Detroit team that really struggles with spacing? That's yet to be seen, really. I worry about the fit with him and Asar Thompson playing at the same time together. And so I think they will have to stagger them. Maybe one will back up the other. But I do get that in a you're in such an early stage of the rebuild that you need to take this type of swings. So I definitely get it on that side of things.
And we are going to do a shift change on our end here. We're going to bring Tyler Metcalf, Tyler Rucker, and Nick Agar-Johnson back onto the stage. So saying thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're going to hand it over to them, and we're all going to be back later on in the program. Metcalf, how are you doing, my man?
I'm speechless. I don't know what to do. This is wild. It's a swing. It's the biggest swing they could probably take right here, but I don't know what needs it addresses or how it makes them any better next year. It's a swing. It is a heck of a swing, and hopefully Cade Cunningham can really get the best out of Ron Holland, because there's a lot to work with, a lot of upside, a lot to be excited about. But man, does that need to be an absolutely perfect situation for him. Oh boy.
You know, anytime you're the 26th ranked team in the NBA in 3-point percentage, you really have to take the guy who shot 24% from deep.
I think this is a signal that no one on this roster is necessarily in their long-term plans, and that this is a new front office building their vision. So, Langdon was a big name or big voice in the player development and roster construction in New Orleans. When you look at a lot of the wings and guys that they drafted, Ron Holland is pretty similar to it. So I'm fascinated that none of these rumors really came out at all. But God, this is fun. Chaos early. I love it.
Yeah, it's better than year one where we went 0 for 1 in the first pick. We at least got the first 4 right on our what we would do mock this morning. But yeah, this is a bit out of left field. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, that's been quiet. That's been quiet the whole time. I mean, you asked everyone, even Wasserman before the draft was even saying Holland was still one of the names that could fall. But that's why everyone's so excited about this year. All it takes is one team to fall in love with the guy, and now things are going to get really crazy, because no one was expecting that from everyone I've talked around the league. They were not expecting Holland to go that early. And, Langdon, that's a swing. That's some balls for your first pick. And I'm not saying that just as to slander Ron Holland, but your first pick at 5, you're taking a guy that we heard from a lot of teams that he had some poor workouts. So that's the fun part about the whole workout process. You just got to look good at one place, and they're going to like you. And I'm spacing on his first name, but the shooting coach they just hired, Vincent.
Fred Vincent. Yeah,
Fred Vincent, one of the best in the league. So that's a pretty good person. Yeah. If he can get Ron's shot going, they got one for Detroit. I like that swing. It's just ballsy. But, hey, if you're going to leave your mark, shout out to Langdon. That's a heck of a swing.
Can I go full conspiracy here for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
My stream has been not perfect, but basically when the ESPN stream said that the pick was in, Langdon picked up his phone and immediately went off camera. Are they looking to trade this? Are they just sort of drafting Holland to hold him hostage for assets for a team that wants him later in the draft? I don't know. It's possible.
Maybe. If they delay it and report it that much later, like they always do, I'll drive myself crazy. I think they're just swinging like, hey.
Yeah. I think it's first front office. They've clearly been given free reign to do what they want, which we saw with the Monty Williams firing. And I think they believe that they have a legitimate 5-year window minimum to build this team. And if you're taking the swing on a guy who has the most upside and you're projecting 3-4 years from now and not to fix a very specific need, there are guys I like better than Holland in this draft, but it's hard to argue that if everything goes right in his development, that he doesn't have one of the highest ceilings in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. It's really a ceiling play. And, again, there certainly wasn't particularly buzz that this was going to be the deal, but I don't know. I mean, does it mean that even Cade is up for sale, or do you think it's just like they're going to try and? That's what I assume, right?
No, because I want Cade running the show and making life easy for Holland. I want all of the on-ball creation responsibilities taken away from him, and just let guys like Cade and Ivy and even Marcus Sasser just allow Asar and Ron to get out in transition, really push the pace, be those chaotic disruptors on the perimeter on defense. So if you take away all of the kind of offensive creation stuff that Ron had to do with the Ignite this year, does the defensive consistency get better? Do we see that kind of commitment to the technique and fundamentals improve back to what we saw more in high school? Does the shot become a little more effective, especially with the new shooting coach? Does, just the efficiency improve because he's taking simpler shots all the time? And instead of trying to attack out of isolation every time, now he's attacking, secondary rotations and attacking against closeouts. So I think for Ron, I oddly like it. I get the swing. I do. And I've been someone who's been very, very skeptical of Ron all year.
I mean, the Pistons were dead last in steals and in the bottom 10 in blocks, right? So if you're trusting Ron to be a defensive playmaker and simplify the rest of his offensive game, you certainly, I'm willing to buy into him on that front for sure. And then, if you think it's a ceiling play beyond that, go for it.
Just never felt like comfortable with them with Buzelis. I don't know why. I just never felt like, I was like, this seems too, when you're just like, everyone's saying this, so it's no way it's going to be true. It just felt that way. It felt like we were going to curveball. I had heard Rob Dillingham. I shared with you guys. Someone told me Rob Dillingham is the one to watch there, and I was like, that is wild. And I was not expecting Holland. So it's awesome. It's a great swing. If you buying into everything getting on the right page, I think it's awesome. I think things are going to get really interesting now. Who do you guys think with Charlotte? It looks like picks in, but who are you thinking direction? Now Buzelis, we weren't expecting to be on the board when we were asking around. Klingon's still there.
We heard they like Cody.
We heard they liked Cody.
Evan Carter makes sense. I think this is still a little early for me, but
Adam Silver.
All right, so he's walking out for me. I think I've been behind most people.
Oh gosh,
I'm behind everybody, so I'm just going to wait for you to tell me who the pick is.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Oh no. Who? Suspense. Show me the name.
Wow. Okay.
Well, shout out Chris.
Shout out Kristen Peak, friend of the program.
Yeah, that one. Perfect.
Wow. Okay. Speaking of swings.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh my gosh, this board is about to get nuts. I love how people in the comments, shout out to the YouTube comments, were like, is this going to get exciting or chaotic soon? If this is more chaotic than I even dreamed, like this is going to be nuts. Go ahead, Metcalf. You were talking about Tijane.
Speaking of upside swings, incredible physical tools. Probably the hardest playing player, like best motor in this entire class. There's never a moment where you didn't know that he was on the floor. Now, what he was doing, was it always the correct thing or efficient or productive? Not always, but he's super young, he's super raw, and if you're buying that work ethic, which I do, if you buy the shooting, which I think most of us do, and that he can really be coached up and you can really develop those defensive inconsistencies into something productive and consistent, he's going to be a heck of a player. And when you pair those physical tools at the power forward position alongside LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, that's a lot of size, a lot of athleticism. It's fun if it works out.
Yeah.
But I'm still not entirely sure how close he is to like contributing legitimate NBA minutes.
They're going to be NBA minutes for him in Charlotte, right? That's
productive, positive, winning minutes.
That's an important distinction, I guess.
I like it. It's a big swing too. I think we've always been talking about like, hey, if you're buying in on him, you're going to swing early. Like you're going to go get him. The idea of him next to Mark Williams, and then you get Brandon Miller and you've got LaMelo. Like I think you're trending in the right direction. He's going to be he's going to infect with his energy. We saw what Brandon Miller was doing during his rookie year, like kind of trying to pump guys up, play hard defense. He's going to be crazy. He's going to be a wild man. Him and Mark Williams are going to be really fun together because they're just going to be flying all over the place. I think the tools are very raw. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I've said this since the beginning. I feel like if you're trying to find that raw ball of clay, from a starting point, he's perfect.
Yeah.
It's just, can it get on the right path? Like now you got to get the player to buy in on like, okay, just work ethic, and everything you hear about Tijane is just fantastic when it comes to work ethic, his mentality. Like for people to be like, he's possessed, he wants to destroy everyone. I'm like, that's what I would be swinging on if you're getting a 6'10", 18, 19-year-old. So I get it. It's just like we're having fun now. Like this is gonna get crazy.
And I think what's really interesting with these last two picks is like kind of coming into this draft, we were a little quite skeptical of are these teams just going to try and find a contributor and just someone who fits and someone, they may not have a ton of like all-star upside necessarily, but you're really comfortable that you're going to get a really solid rotation player for a long time. Or are they going to just take the ultimate home run swing? And these last two picks have been two of the biggest home run swings you could possibly take in this draft.
I mean, you got to think of it this way. We got Portland on the clock. Shout out Mike Schmitz. They had a big day. Traded for someone I think we all love. Nick, you're on the island with us, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes. We all
him
love
and
him.
Tumani Kamara as the forward pairing. That's fun.
If they take Klingon, I don't care about the bigs they have on the roster right now. I'm sorry, Blazers fans. If you get Klingon, his playmaking, Denny's playmaking and feel, Scoot, Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons, I like where you're going. Like I like the road you're on, and pick us in. Maybe we're about to find out. So Silver's on the.
I think this has to be Klingon.
I'd be
Klingon
if it isn't.
Donovan Klingon.
All right, there we go.
Perfect.
Wow,
That's a dream for them.
what a day! Hey, I think Blazers fans, you should be pumped out of your mind. You had a heck of a day. I think you got one of the best players in the draft.
I had him 2 on my board.
I think I had him at 3.
I had him
what about
5, so I hate him, obviously.
No, yeah, I mean that is the rules that we all know
Yes,
this.
of course.
Nick, what do you like about him? Where are you a little hesitant? Because obviously, we're gonna pick on you because you had him at 5. That's
Of course.
your punishment. But no, I think there is good concerns, there is good questions, but I just like the positive. So, what do you like about him, Nick?
I love the defense that he brings. I love his ability to protect the rim. I love his ability to set ridiculously hard screens. I love his rim running. Honestly, my biggest concern with him is health, which is, I think I said this the first time we mocked Donovan Klingon to Portland, that it feels a bit cursed to send the injury-plagued center to the Portland Trailblazers. But, I mean, outside of that, he's someone who, again, is an excellent long-term building block for the young guards that they have. He's someone who create a lot of rim gravity on the offensive end. He's someone who will protect the rim for a team that, let's just be honest, struggled defensively last year. But, beyond that, I think the Blazers are in an awesome place at this point. I mean, yes, they were bottom of the Western Conference last year, right? But, a lot of that was because they had serious injuries to their big guys, right? Simons played barely half the season. Shaden Sharp played 32 games, right? This is a team that had a lot of injury concerns, and, I don't think they're bottom of the Western Conference quality. And, if they have Klingon, if one of your concerns is that he never played a large minute role at UConn, he's going to presumably be, behind or, alongside DeAndre Ayton, right? He's someone who they can afford to bring along slightly more slowly, but the defensive impact that he has for this team, I think, is just going to be massive. And the gravity that he'll have around the basket for Portland's young guards is going to be spectacular for their development.
Metcalf, I was talking to someone today, Blazers fan, and I don't mean this as slander to a veteran on their roster, but I said I would be much more excited about the future with Donovan Klingon than DeAndre Ayton right now. Like I said, I don't think Ayton's stopping you from taking someone like Klingon, because I think Klingon's impact with what he can do on the floor could take that team to another level. Like, do you think that's ridiculous? Because Ayton's a little bit more offensive focused, but I said, now you get Klingon in there with those weapons around, his playmaking ability, his feel, and this was before they added Denny to the mix. I just think this is a fantastic pick, especially at 7.
Yeah, and if you're really buying in on Klingon, the idea is that he can be Marc Gasol, where that defensive ability, the passing from, the elbow, the top of the key, having some pick and roll versatility, maybe, the rumors are, as they always are this time of year, that the beefy center is going to eventually be able to step out and shoot it from 3. But all of the execs and scouts that you talk to in the league, they tend to believe that. And it's not just coming from Klingon's camp or, their social media campaign and push where it's like, no one really believes this. A lot of the league believes that he's going to shoot it in some form or fashion, not prolific stuff, but enough where it's a real option out of the pick and roll. So when you're getting that, if you're taking him this high and you're really buying in, that's kind of who you're hoping you're going to get. And at a minimum, even if the shot doesn't come around, even if he, doesn't play 30 plus minutes a night for his entire career, he's going to be a fantastic defender and rebounder and screener every second he's on the floor. I love the fit. And then when you kind of pair it with the Denny move earlier, this entire process, we've kind of been mocking them a young, raw, developmental wing. If any of those guys turn out to be what Denny was last year with Washington, it'd be a fantastic career for them. So the fact that they're getting that already on a descending contract, I think this is an absolutely fantastic day for Portland.
It's a big couple of years.
Yeah.
I think you got to be very, very pumped if you're Blazers fans. But, I was excited to see what Schmitz, that organization, would do and kind of the vision they'd have since Schmitz took over as an assistant GM there. And I thought they were going to emphasize trying to build through the draft. And Scoot, I still think Chris Murray is going to have a much better second season. Tumani Kamara you get as kind of a filler in a trade. Now you get Klingon and Denny. You use your 14th pick to get a potential steal, a guy that, no offense to Wizards fans, we were all very eager for Denny to get out of there just to see kind of if he could take his game to another level. I'm really excited with what Portland's putting together. What do you guys think? Spurs.
Yeah.
So now we've got Bazelis, we've got Connect, we've got Topic, and we've got Carter on the board. I mean, where would McCain, you guys go? And Cody.
And Rob.
And McCain. Yeah, and Rob.
There are a dozen names here that I'd be like, oh, yeah, love it. Makes sense. I think they're in an awesome spot. And, it's, again, do you take another big swing? Or do you kind of address the shooting need? I think I lean a little more towards the shooting need. So a name like Dalton Knecht, Jared McCain, Devin Carter even, Rob Dillingham, those guys would get me pretty excited, especially since some of them have some pretty massive upside still. But you already took that home run swing with Castle at 4. And, I love that fit, obviously. I've talked enough about it, but I think this is where you kind of try and blend those two of let's find that shooting guaranteed, but also with someone with a lot of upside. And I really like Rob Dillingham here.
Yeah, I mean, the ESPN camera flashed on him, certainly as Rucker wrote about towards the end of the cycle, he's NBA Jam, right? He's someone who can heat up in an absolute hurry. And, certainly for San Antonio, I mean, I think Stephon Castle addresses a lot of the issues that I thought they had last year, which I think a lot of those issues honestly stem from not playing Trey Jones enough, but that's a different conversation. But, I think in terms of the playmaking that, Castle handles a lot of that. And then if you bring in someone like a Dillingham to just, come off the bench and pour in buckets, especially with someone like Wembanyama behind him, right? The biggest concern, I think it's pretty clear with Dillingham, is going to be the defense, right? Especially given his size and frame. But there are a few people in the history of the NBA who are better at cleaning up mistakes around the rim than Victor Wembanyama. So, if he's going to go somewhere and it looks like the pick is in, I think Dillingham makes a lot of sense.
There we go. Silver looks like he's weirdly tall.
Who? Say it.
Rob Dillingham, Kentucky.
There we go.
Good for Rob and Ron, man.
I love that.
Those guys were in a dark, buzz. I was like, ooh, weird media campaign. I had heard he only went to a couple teams. He was hurt the whole time, which I was like, it's not good if you're trying to prove that you can be fine. But that's cool. If you're Castle and Rob, kind of little thunder and lightning, I guess. It's going to be interesting.
And I think there are two guys who have proven that they can play on or off ball, where it doesn't really matter who your, quote unquote point guard is. But we saw all year with Kentucky, Rob played a lot off ball. He played a lot off of Reed Shepherd. And then he also sprinkled in a lot of on ball creation and playmaking and just real flair of shot making and shot creation. And we saw Castle go from being the pure offensive engine in high school to being an off ball wing. I love this. There's so much talk about should the Spurs trade for Trae Young, and it's like, why not? Oh no.
here we go.
Metcalf, this one's gonna be a little shocker to you, I
Oh, no.
think.
Oh.
Oh, oh, Spurs fans are gonna be
Oh my
just
God. Okay.
crushed.
Holy crap.
All right, we're waiting for
Weird
official details for everyone listening, but
Rob
let me
Dillingham
get-
to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
I
Holy
muted my notifications the whole night.
Okay. I'm fascinated.
Sorry,
to
hold
see
on.
what they give
I have to say something. Wow.
How eloquent of you.
I was getting a DM. I'm not going to say it out loud. No, it's really exciting, Metcalf. What do you think up? So they jumped a ton.
a lot. I am fascinated to see what they gave up, but
Did we get our first I have to wear the wrong team's hat of the night?
yeah,
Yeah,
officially,
I
at
can't
least.
stand that. I can't.
Yeah, no. So okay, so with the Timberwolves, holy crap. That Dallas series really showed that they had no one on that team who could create their own shot outside of Anthony Edwards, and Rob can do that. Oh boy, can he do that. That's a real spark plug off the bench. Ton of shot creation, a lot of just creativity and versatility and shot making that they really didn't have on that team. Defensive concerns kind of similar to the Spurs situation, where I think he's going to a situation where they can really insulate that. I guess they found their backup point guard long term to replace Mike Conley. What a move. Holy cow.
I think you got to start getting creative if you're a team like that. If you're like, hey, we've got the defensive firepower, we need to swing for a little bit more of a spark offensively. And I mean, what a very fun fit for Rob too. Now you can surround him with lengthy defenders. There's a world in which Jalen Clark has become his best friend on defense. I mean, this is fun. Albert says Minnesota trading 2031 unprotected and protected 2030 pick swap.
That's it.
We got into the 2030 talks. This is fantastic. Who are they scouting?
Yeah,
Who are the Spurs scouting in 2031?
Their
He's the only prospect
2031.
I know that's age 12.
Their 2031 first round pick became available like the day the season ended. So it's Tim Conley's like, oh my God, I've had this future first round pick for far
Because of the Gobert trade. That's the only reason they could do it. This is incredible.
It's like, God, get
He
rid
was
of
so
that.
eager. He's like, I can't stand this pick.
Wow. 2030 swap, top one protected. Incredible. Oh my God. I love this. This is fantastic.
This is really fun. We need to pour a shot out for Spurs fans that were very excited to be like, we spoke it into existence, robbed the Spurs, only to get woed bombed.
So now if they
3 minutes
still
later.
didn't trade this year's pick, they could potentially use 27 and 37 to move up a couple spots if they have a guy that falls, unless I'm missing details where those were included for this one too. But we can move
They
on
gotta
to
think
Memphis's.
Memphis's pick is in.
Man.
We think an Edie.
Memphis Grizzlies select Zach
There it
Edey.
Shout out Corey. You called this one days
Corey
ago.
calling it.
Corey on the field of 68. Corey, we love you. I love the fit.
Yeah, this is
I have
sense.
questions about the upside. I love the fit. And I think with the team, this has got a legit shot of like Edey being a beast. If he can stick and play and just be impactful, and you're getting him and Jaren Jackson on the floor together at times,
Yeah.
boy.
I mean,
What do you think? What do you guys think?
You ship Steven Adams out and you replace him with Zach Edey. That's not too bad. I'm curious if he starts. I mean,
No,
Memphis,
yeah, I agree.
Memphis doesn't have that much in the way of like true centers. They have a lot of 6'10" power forward types like Jaren Jackson, right? But it'll be interesting. I mean, certainly even if he comes off the bench, he's going to provide a lot of offense for a team that, granted, would not have been 30th in the league offensively if they had more than like 3 minutes healthy from all their players combined. But aside that, they definitely could use the offensive punch that he could provide. And certainly with Jaren Jackson Jr., I mean, if you're worried about the foot speed with Edey, Jaren Jackson can cover a lot of ground.
Metcalf, where are we at? Me and you have been a little cooler on Edey Island. Well, you didn't like the pricing. Thought the market was a little rich. So we've been browsing. Do you like it with this fit, though? This is why we need to do
This
Corey's
fit, yes.
idea of the post-draft big
Yeah.
board, because this would make me move Edey up a ton.
Agreed.
Because I love the fit.
Agreed. And I think he's going to be their starting center, and it wouldn't shock me if he's playing 30-plus minutes a night right off the bat. His conditioning at Purdue was insane. He never got in foul trouble. Elite rebounder, interior finisher, screener, catches everything. He's going to be really, really fun with Memphis, and that the amount of space that he's going to create for John Morant getting downhill is going to be insane. We saw how important Steven Adams was when healthy with that team. Zach Edey, I think, is going to basically fill those shoes really quickly. I get the concerns about him defending in space and all of that kind of stuff. His footwork is so much better than it gets credit for. And then when you have guys like Jaren Jackson kind of roaming next to you and doing most of the defensive player of the year stuff that we saw from him, especially when Steven Adams was on the roster, I think he's going to be more than fine. So I really, really like this fit for Memphis.
Looks like the pick is in for Utah. That was pretty quick.
Let's do predictions. Let's have some fun with this. I can't do it because I already saw who it is.
Yeah, that's awkward because I already did too.
Well, see,
okay, well then
Metcalf, predict.
this is as awkward.
You guys
Metcalf,
need a little bit of showmanship. You got.
No, well, I'm trying to see because.
So I think
okay, well, here you go.
still long-term
What do you think, Metcalf? What do you think the Utah Jazz should be doing? You're the GM right now. Where are you going?
No, I'm trying to tell you, but my God. No, so I think there's still long-term thinking. Given how the West is right now, it's who's going to be the best pick for us 3 years from now. And I think the names at the top of that list for me are Nikola Topic, Bub Carrington, and Cody Williams. We've seen Danny Ainge take swings on raw, really high upside wings a lot in the past. Ron Holland was frequently mocked here, even though he canceled his workout. But I think Cody makes a lot of sense. I like Nikola Topic here too, long term. But maybe the reported slide with him is seeming to be a little more real than it was with Holland and Dillingham.
Well, I'd love to tell you, with the 10th pick, the Utah Jazz select Cody Williams, Colorado.
There we go.
I felt like this was the dream for Utah. I think they wanted Castle pretty bad. I think Gavoni even said yesterday they were trying to figure out a way to go up, but I think this is probably another guy that was very high on their list. So I think getting the upside at Cody at 10 is fantastic.
Yeah.
And we've seen how patient, like Metcalf saying, how patient Danny Ainge can be with guys that have a ton of talent. They're going to let them develop. And another team, we just talked about Portland, but, Utah's putting together some stuff in the last couple of years. Nick, what do you think about Cody?
I think it's a fantastic fit for exactly the reasons that Metcalf already said, not to be boring, but, he's been smarter than me on draft covers that we've done together for 8 years now. So I'm kind of used to it at this point. But no, I mean, he's clearly a long-term play. He's someone who certainly the volume was not great, but the shot looked good. He's someone who plays with an incredibly high level of feel on the offensive end. I am worried about the defense for him, but I think that's going to be more of a short-term concern. I mean, his screen navigation did not do him any favors in my mind, but I think part of that is just how skinny he is more than sort of an effort concern. But yeah, I mean, if this is a long-term play, which it certainly seems like it is for Utah, if we're talking 3 years from now, I think he could easily return, top 10, maybe even top 5 value in this draft. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for sort of the timeline that Utah's on at this point.
I love it for Utah. Great long-term thinking, but we got to head out. We'll be back later. Corey, Albert, Paige, they're heading in, and we get to watch Corey cope with whatever the Bulls decide to do in real time here, so it should be fun.
Yeah, it's probably going to be something that's going to make me throw my headphones and walk off the screen. So,
hey, Ron Holland's already off the board. You're safe.
No, but I get Ron Holland. There's another guy that's been connected to the Bulls in recent days. It's fine. They'll do something completely predictable, probably, and unimaginative. What do you think the Bulls should do, Nick?
That is a good question. I mean, honestly, at this point, given that I think the Bulls are hopefully going to go away from the treadmill of mediocrity, again, if it's what I would like them to do rather than what they're actually going to do, I think it might make a lot of sense for them to take a chance on Nikola Topic, hope that, he comes back from his ACL injury and is fine. And, I have him quite a bit higher than 11 on my personal board. So, if he comes up, adds a lot of rim pressure for the team, one of the best, if not the best passers in the draft, I think he could help the Bulls out a lot offensively. Defense is a concern, certainly, but, I think he makes a lot of sense there. Paige, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Topic. On my board, I have Dalton Connect and Jared McCain as the highest, just looking at it. I don't think they'll really go that way. I would be kind of shocked. I expect Jared McCain kind of like to fall kind of like later in the lottery. I think the Bulls, I think Devin Carter would be the perfect fit here. I'm kind of still shocked that Ron Holland is to the Pistons, honestly. Growing up watching them, it's just I really hope it pans out. But we'll see how it goes for sure.
Pick appears to be in, which is interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would prefer Devin Carter at this moment. Just an influx of dog to that Bulls team. Look, I love Topic, but the Bulls just traded for Josh Giddey, and
that's fair.
The fit there that would be a disaster. My dreams of Topic died as soon as that trade happened. I mean, I think that the chaos of this draft gives a ton of options for Chicago here, and at the end of the day, there's probably only one guy left on the board that would make me toss my heads off and walk off stage. And I don't think that the Bulls are actually going to take that guy that high. So with that said, just give me a guy who at least fits the modern NBA a little bit. That's what we need. I would love Dalton here. I don't care how old he is. He could score the hell out of the ball. He's a great shooter. But at the end of the day, I think, sometimes ties to our background are just too much to pass up for some people.
Is that a subtweet, Corey? Feels like one.
It's a subtweet. I also am a part of that background there. Modest Buzelis is the pick for the Chicago Bulls from Illinois, like Arturas Karnisovas, also of Lithuanian descent, like myself.
There you go.
And to be honest, I know I've been hard on Buzelis. I'm not upset by the pick. Do I think that he's somebody who can shoot? I do not. And I say that because he has shown that he cannot. But I do think that there is a version of him that could kind of be like a Jaden McDaniels-esque guy. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can create his own shot a little bit. And he'll make threes infrequently, but he will shoot them. But at the end of the day, I thought he showed some really good defensive upside in the G League, especially, as a weak side shot blocker and an event creator. I think that his passing is never been his strong suit, and he's going to get a lot of comparisons to Franz Wagner. But to me, if he just learns how to be a net neutral, playmaker rather than a guy who is maybe a jumbo creator, I think there's something there with Buzelis. I thought that the Richiche Buzelis beef was cute when that first came out, and I was like, I wonder if that is a real quote. Now I think it's a little weird that he's harping on it. It's giving me Stan vibes, so I'm a little nervous about how weird that is. But I don't completely hate the pick. Not the direction I would have gone. But so far, the Bulls front office has made just about every move I'd have done the opposite of. So it's exactly the kind of move I expected tonight.
Perfect hit rate right there. But I think with Matas Buzelis too, like he does have like tons of confidence. And I think the one thing with him is like hopefully he doesn't, that doesn't come up to like bite him at the end. Like I think because I think like right now, like it's awesome to have confidence, especially when you're a young player like coming in, like, and he kind of wants to prove to people like, hey, like I was able to shoot in high school in the past. Like I did have a rough year, like being in like a pros league with the G League Ignite. So I think he's kind of just like trying to prove himself more to people, but like just let your game kind of do the talking is like kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I that's well said. Nick, what do you think of the pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a similar boat with you where I feared that it would be someone who might be a lot worse of a fit for Chicago. And I think the shooting concerns are, certainly maybe a bit overblown by his G League stats. But I think on the flip side, I doubt he's going to be, a 40-ish% 3-point shooter like he was his senior year of high school right away. But, certainly him being the hometown kid is nice. If spoiler alert for a couple picks ahead, but with Jared McCain still on the board, Sacramento native, I have to shout out the Kings before we get there because I'm going to be ridiculous like that. But no, I mean, with Buzelis, he's someone who was, a lot more highly valued before a season where he had to play in a difficult environment with the G League Ignite. I mean, that was not a team that was going into games every night thinking they had a chance to win. And, I think for that environment, he and Ron Holland did decently well for themselves. And yeah, again, I mean, I think there might be picks that I would have rather made if I were the Chicago Bulls, but certainly they could have gone in directions that would have made less sense in my mind.
They certainly could have. I'm just so confused by what direction they're going in at this point. Like, I mean, Giddey, Buzelis, Kobe White, good size. So, they're clearly valuing positional size at this point. And I think that's smart. Kobe White is probably the only one who could shoot out of that trio. I'm guessing they're going to sign and trade DeRozan out. Zach LaVine, I know they're trying to trade, but it wouldn't surprise me if they rehab his value just enough that the Bulls couldn't possibly enter into the Cooper Flag conversation next year. Very similarly to how Nikola Mirotic went on a heater and had them avoid the disastrous move of choosing Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic, as I would have expected them to do in that moment. But
thanks. Appreciate that one.
That just happened organically, Nick.
Sure thing.
I don't hate it. I'm really interested to see what happens here with the next pick. I mean, OKC, how are we feeling about their options here? Paige, who do you think is the most like OKC kind of player left on that board?
Yeah, I think they can go a few different directions. You have Keyshawn George out of Miami, Tristan Da Silva out of Colorado. I think Bub Carrington would kind of be a fun pick here. I don't really expect them to do that by any means. But if I were the Thunder and like, I think we've heard like he's had good workouts with them, and I think he could be a great fit for them here. But I guess we'll just have to see.
Nick, what do you think?
I mean, we've mocked Kyle Filipowski to them a number of times, but given the players that are still on the board here, I think they would have a couple guys that they might want to target ahead of him. I mean, this was a team that was a spectacular shooting squad last year, but if they add Dalton Connect to that mix, that's just a massive, massive offense that they could put together. And it's going to be hard for anybody to be able to defend that Thunder roster. And certainly, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like the buzz might be that Dalton wasn't quite going to go top 10, but for him to be here for OKC, I personally would like him to fall maybe one pick later than OKC, but given that he's on the board, I think he's someone that I'd be very strongly looking at if I was the Thunder front office.
The Thunder front office they really know how to do it, man. They know what they're doing over there. They play with house money every year. And it seems and appears that my stream is way behind. So
Yeah,
I'm not
here.
sure exactly where Adam Silver is. I know that this prospect is being reported. The Oklahoma City Thunder replaced Josh Giddey with Nikola Topic.
Out with the old and with the new.
I mean, if there's any team that can afford to wait on Topic coming back from his injury, you'd probably assume it was the team that was literally number 1 in the Western Conference last year.
Yeah. And like the thing with Topic's injury too, like they did the same thing with Chet Holmgren. Chet, like they kind of waited for him to come back with his injury, with his foot. They kind of gave him time, and he had a really productive sophomore season, rookie season, whatever you want to call this past season with the Thunder for Chet. Like he had a really productive year. So I think this pick makes sense for them. I'm kind of happy for Topic that he didn't fall out of the lottery given the circumstances.
I think he dropped too far.
Yeah.
I think the Oklahoma City Thunder's backcourt is probably a better backcourt core than most of the teams in the league. With Jason Waller,
pretty comfortably, honestly.
I mean, this kid this year was pretty unbelievable at times. I mean, he was shooting 70% at the rim in the half court through most of the year. Like, as somebody who was not an above the rim finisher, this is a guy who just did it with craft. He did it with creativity. He did it with pace. He did it with an underrated first step. I mean, we know he doesn't have the longest wingspan, but he's really good at using extension finishes. And the fact that he's 6'7" in shoes, a 6'5.5" wingspan is still a plus size for a guard. It's not like he's, even though it's a negative wingspan, it's still longer than probably a lot of guards that are going to get taken tonight. Add in the fact that he's one of the youngest guys in the entire draft. And I think, why not take a shot if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder and just add this kid into your organization, change a pace guard off the bench, push the pace, make plays. You think about all of that space that they have and all of the kind of passes that he could make. And let's see what they can do with his jumper. I think he's probably got way better indicators than Giddey had coming into this Thunder situation. The Thunder also have a pretty damn good shooting coach of their own. Maybe you could consider him, the greatest of all time. So I think this is an awesome situation for Nikola Topic to come into. There's no rush for him to come in and play next year. They don't need him to do that. Just unbelievable work by Sam Presti and Hennigan and the entire crew in Oklahoma City.
Silver's coming up to the podium on my end now, so that tells you how far behind my stream is. It's fine. It's fine.
Just
Everything's fine.
Well, Nick, I mean, he's going to call Nikola Topic his name to the Thunder. That means that the Sacramento Kings will be on the clock. So what are you expecting? Who do you want here?
I really hope that it's Dalton Connect. He checks so many boxes for the Kings. I mean, first of all, he's almost a prototypical Monty McNair pick, right? Someone who's, veteran college player, right? Coming in at 23, pretty developed. He's someone who they can expect to play right away. I mean, certainly there's a bit of a need for length at the forward spots on the Kings, which, Dalton doesn't quite provide. But I mean, with his athleticism, with his incredible shooting touch, Keegan Murray, you can slide to the 4. Certainly he guarded 4s last season when he took a real step forward on the defensive end. If you had Dalton Connect to this team, especially given that the Kings became, a top 10 defense during the last couple months of the season with Keon Ellis in the starting lineup, I really hope it's Dalton Connect. I think he checks so many boxes for them. I think he's, sort of prototypical Kings front office pick, and also is someone who can help the Kings out offensively in a ton of different areas. Maybe he might not have as high of a ceiling as some of the 19-year-olds in the draft. But again, the Kings have shown a willingness during Monty McNair's entire tenure to go with the older players, go with guys who can come in and play right away. And if Dalton Connect comes in as the 5th starter, essentially, fills in as the small forward next to Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, De'Aaron Fox, and Domantas Sabonis, I mean, that is a killer offensive lineup. And Yeah, I mean, there are other options that I think I might like there, but given that Dalton Connect is still on the board, I would be surprised and a little bit upset if he's not the pick here.
I would.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Paige. I think all those reasons for me. Yeah, I agree, but there's a lot of talent on the board, Paige. We still have Jared McCain. We have Tristan Da Silva. We have Bub Carrington. Jacoby Walter is still on the board. There's a lot of different options. If it's not Dalton Connect, who do you think fits this Kings team that has brought back Malik Monk?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like if Malik Monk wasn't an option and if he wasn't coming back to the Kings, I would go Jared McCain here for the Kings. I think too, like Tristan Da Silva would be a good pick as well. You get an elite floor spacer, you get plus size on the perimeter, great defender as well. And he's also on that older side too. And he's just a winning basketball player that, he can come off the bench. You know what he's going to do. I think he's a player that can come in and know his role and play it extremely well. But I am going to go with Dalton Connect too. He's still the highest player on my board. And I think he's, one of few players in this draft too that can like come in and like take over a game offensively.
Pick appears to be in. This is not stressful at all. I mean, I think Da Silva was, at or near the top of my list before we got to this point on draft night, right? If Dalton Connect was off the board, I think Da Silva would check again, just as you said, Paige, a lot of those same boxes. But, if you have to decide between the two of them, I certainly would hope that they go with Connect here. Corey, what about you?
I mean, yeah, Connect for sure. I mean, looking at other options, though, I still love Bub Carrington. I know he doesn't, fit a ton with what they have in that backcourt as is. But from a best player available perspective, he's somebody that I still love. I mean, Devin Carter, backcourt maybe isn't the biggest need, but this is a guy 6'3" who I think he has like a 6'9" wingspan, shot 37% on a really tough diet of shots this year. He's another guy who was projected to go way higher, and even rumors that he was promised to Chicago, and he's still on the board. Really interesting guy that could fit there. I know you love Deron Holmes. I mean, is this too early for Deron Holmes?
Not for me, but I think for pretty much everybody else. So there's that.
Tell me what you like about Deron and how he would fit, or somebody like him, would fit to the Kings.
I think Deron checks a couple of important boxes for the Kings. First of all, he's someone who, rather than forcing Keegan Murray to slide down to the 4, he would slot right in as the power forward, whether that be, coming off the bench his first year and then replacing Harrison Barnes year 2. He's someone also, in addition to that, who can play small ball 5, something that it's lower down the priority list for the Kings, certainly, but somebody who the Kings can plug in at center and run a lot of the dribble handoff sets that Domantas Sabonis runs. I mean, Alex Len and JaVale McGee, for all they provided for the Kings, were not exactly guys who you wanted to have the offense running through them in any capacity. And Deron Holmes certainly would provide that as well off the bench. And of course, the Kings struggled with rim protection, which is always going to be an issue when Domantas Sabonis is your starting center. But, Deron Holmes averaged more than 2 blocks a game 2 out of 3 years in college. So he's someone who I think checks all of those sorts of boxes for the Kings. I also really buy into his shot development, and specifically through how he's become an excellent standstill shooter. That was really the most important part of his shooting profile in my mind for him to sort of fill out. So yeah, I mean, I think Deron would make a lot of sense for the Kings, but it looks like the pick is in.
Oh, there we go.
Pick is in, Nick. And I'm feeling a little jealous at the moment because Devin Carter is headed to Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it goes back to, Corey, what you were saying with, is backcourt the biggest need for the Kings, especially with Malik Monk, back in the picture? No, I don't think so. But, when you're talking about Devin Carter, I mean, that 6'9" wingspan will really help out defensively, excellent defensive playmaker, certainly something that, again, given the sort of changes that the Kings made in the last couple of months of the season when Keon Ellis entered the starting lineup, they became a more defensively focused team. And that's definitely a niche that he can fill. Excellent rebounder. The Kings struggled pretty heavily rebounding outside of Domantas Sabonis, who's obviously a vacuum on the glass. But I mean, Harrison Barnes took a step back in terms of his contributions on the boards. And, I think a lot of that was due to, an expected decline in athleticism for a 12-year NBA vet who's in his early 30s. So, I think as well, Devin Carter can put, he's not the greatest rim pressure guard in this class, but that's certainly what the Kings need, I think, from their guard unit more than anything else, is someone who can attack the basket. And, it's been said time and time again, Devin Carter is an absolute dog. And certainly, JaVale McGee recently had a number of interviews where he said that one of his biggest concerns with the Kings roster was that they didn't have, necessarily the kinds of players on the roster who were those absolutely, aggressive, go after it kind of dogs like, Malik Monk and Keon Ellis, or that kind of player. But the Kings could use more of that. They could use more energy in the room. And that's certainly something that Devin Carter provides at a very high level.
He certainly does. He impressed me so much when I saw him live this year. I saw him multiple times. I mean, just a wing player. He just does all those things. And I mean, he might be the best athlete in the draft. I mean, his athletic testing showed it, but like just even some of the dunks that he had, his open court speed. This is a kid who is going to really help Sacramento next year. Clearly, they're interested in trying to make a run for it, right? And so they get somebody who I think has potential to continue on an upward trajectory, but also has a little bit of a floor at the same time. And, at this pick, there's safety in that. Washington now is going to be back on the board because they made a trade earlier with Portland. So they took Alex R at number 2. What do we think that their options are going to be on the board right now? We still have Dalton on the board, right? Jared McCain, Tristan Da Silva. I mean, what do we think? Paige.
Yeah, I think they have a ton of options that they can really get their value back with. I mean, Jared McCain, like you mentioned, Tristan Da Silva, Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington is still on the board, Dalton Connect. That's 5 that are in that 10 to 14 range, right where they're supposed to be, or even higher. And I think too, they just traded away one of their, younger pieces, and it's kind of okay, so what are they doing? They just got Alex Sarr for their front court. I think if I were them, I would try to kind of replace, Denny in some way with Tristan Da Silva or Keyshawn George. I know me and Albert are really big George people. But I think if me personally, I would go with Da Silva here, just because I think he offers a little bit more than Keyshawn does. He's a little bit more developed than Keyshawn is as well.
I'm also a pretty big Keyshawn George guy who hates 6'8" guys who shoot 40% from 3. But Tristan Da Silva, I love him. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Kyle Kuzma, because then they'll really start needing more forward depth. But Bilal Coulibaly last year, Alex Sarr now. I'm not sure if there's still another French guy on the board. I don't know if that's too early for Macomb.
A bit of a reach, maybe.
We'll see. We got some guys who really like him, but I think those are all interesting options for a team that now it seems like, all right, let's get youth. We're going to get rid of the guys who are pretty good. Maybe Corey Kispert will be on the move too. Although I really like his spacing next to Bilal and Alex Sarr. Maybe they go with Dalton here. Maybe some shooting, but they can go any way they want. They're going to try to be in the Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey sweepstakes next year. So I think you go best player available. I think that's the move for them, and just try to figure out how do we be as bad as possible while getting a really interesting talent. So again, Bub Carrington is going to be the best player on my board until he's taken. Personally, I thought he was really interesting when I broke down film with him. But Dalton Connect. Who would have thought Dalton was the guy that dropped?
Yeah, I mean, you said Bub's going to be the highest on your board until he's picked. Dalton's going to be the highest on my board until he's picked. And, I think there's a bit more overlap with Kispert than there might be on some other rosters. But, this was a team that was bottom 5 in 3-point shooting last year, right? They could use all the shooting help they could get on that front.
Talk to me, Paige.
It's your guy.
My guy. Who's my guy?
Bub. It's Bub.
Bub. The Washington Wizards take Bub Carrington with the 14th pick in the draft. I absolutely love it. I love this move. I think the Wizards had a great night. Bub, 6'5", 6'8" wingspan, 195 pounds. He's wearing that long sleeve tee all year, so thought that he was going to come in a little skinnier, but he's got a good frame. He came out blazing, right? Like opened up with a triple-double first game of the year. Had some highs, had some lows, and he finished really hot. I mean, this is a guy who had 100 pull-up shots this year as a freshman, one of the youngest domestic-born players in the class. Bub Carrington is really interesting. Got better defensively towards the end of the year. I mean, this is a guy who I think when we look back, this is a guy who I think has some of the highest potential in the entire class with his skill set. Definitely has to figure out, when to hit that pull up, when to keep attacking the rim and finishing. That's going to help his efficiency. But I think this was a really, really interesting home run type pick for the Washington Wizards here.
There's a lot of runway for him too. I mean, Tyus Jones was the only point guard on this roster, and I will cape forever for the Jones brothers. I think they're two of the most underrated guards in the league. But if you have that kind of runway for Carrington, you can have sort of bring him along more slowly, maybe. But certainly, there's going to be a lot of room for him to just come in and learn on the job. The Wizards have that opportunity with probably pretty much anybody who was going to be the pick, but certainly, I mean, there's a lot of room there for him to grow and for him to explore the sort of boundaries of his game with the Wizards next season.
Paige, what do you think about Carrington's fit here with the Washington Wizards?
No, I love it. Like all the points that you guys mentioned, like he can, come in, learn, he can hit the ground running in some ways, just because they've been in a real rebuild phase for what it seems like forever. Like I'm kind of ready for the Wizards to come back and be a team that people not respect's the wrong word, but kind of, get excited about in some ways. And, it'll be interesting to see how Jordan Poole feels about this fit with Bub, and it's going to be super interesting, but I think this pick is the right pick for the Wizards. So I'm excited for their draft so far.
Yeah, really great job by that new front office here. Miami's going to be coming up on the clock in a few minutes. Nick, who do you think they should take? You got to factor in Heat culture here.
Yeah, I mean, Dalton Connect doesn't exactly scream Heat culture to me, even though he's the highest guy on my board. So
I mean, Max Strus.
Yeah, no, there's a Duncan Robinson. There's a role for that. I don't know. I mean, shooters. They do love their shooters. I think Jared McCain, speaking of which, is going to be someone who's definitely high on their list. And then I don't know. I mean, Tristan da Silva is interesting. I think he's interesting for pretty much every team, just because he's someone who it's very easy to imagine him fitting into pretty much any roster construction. So, he's someone who would be high on my list for Miami. But I want to throw out a bit of a wild card because, man, what if they decide that the defensive impact of Ryan Dunn is worth taking him at 15 and hoping that he figures out the offense? Because that would be a scary kind of player with his motor, with his defensive playmaking, to throw him into the Miami context. That could be spicy. It's a bit of a reach, I think, even for me, who I'm pretty high on Ryan Dunn, but I think that'd be really fun if they take him.
I'll never talk bad about a Long Island guy. Shout out to Freeport, Long Island.
To hear that.
I mean, I think it's probably a little early for Ryan Dunn, but again, all he has to do is figure out how to shoot 35% from three, and all of a sudden, there's no reason he wouldn't be in the conversation to be a lottery pick. I mean, defensively, like you said, he's everything that Miami would value from an interior defender, a perimeter defender. But they are a team that I think is going to be focused on spacing with Jimmy Butler, with Bam Adebayo. I think the surrounding pieces, are going to have to shoot in some form or fashion. So positionally, what do you think are some position of needs outside of just shooting for the Miami Heat?
Paige, you're the Miami person.
I'm trying to think because I do like Jared McCain here. I don't know though. I don't know. I didn't really expect like Dalton to still be here, honestly. So I'm like trying to like picture like, you know, if he could, how far could he actually drop if the Heat honestly don't take like the best player available. I think Tristan Da Silva still, like, I think he would be a great fit in Miami. Gives you shooting, defense. So I don't know. I think they can go a ton of different directions here.
Pick appears to be in. I mean, I'm going to cape for my guy one last time before I hop off the stream for the night. But I mean, for the same exact reasons that I said Deron Holmes might make a lot of sense behind Domantas Sabonis, he would make a lot of sense behind Bam Adebayo, you know, run a lot of the same offense through him. He's an excellent big man passer. Miami was dead last in the league in block shots last year. That's certainly something that Deron Holmes would be able to help out with right away. They also were not a great rebounding team. He would help on that front. And you know, he's someone who you can play alongside or in place of Bam, especially if his shot development that he showed over the last year does end up proving to be real. And he does end up being, you know, a mid-30s or higher 3-point shooter sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thinking of Duran and thinking big, that is a position that does kind of make sense. I feel like He'd have been tinkering with guys who can play with Bam and haven't really necessarily found anybody to do it. And when you look at the Eastern Conference and Kristaps Porzingis and how much of a game breaker he was for the Celtics this year, and if you're Miami and you're trying to win a championship, maybe you're thinking, all right, we have to go through him. Center could be an interesting positional need. It seems like, you know, they have a ton of wings already, but yeah, guard or big, I think could definitely be the type of player that they shoot for. And Pat Riley, I mean, he is a guy who is not going to make this pick lightly. They took Jaime Jaquez last year. He's not going to care about, you know, whether the player is old, whether the player is young. He is going to just try to get the player that he thinks is going to be the best fit and makes the most sense for the Miami Heat franchise. There's a guy, he could take a chance on a player, whether old or young, right? And he has, you know, the cachet to, if he misses, you know, it won't matter. He's going to be there as long as he wants to be. It appears that Adam Silver is at the podium, and perhaps the most Heat culture guy of all time.
Wow.
Kel'el Ware goes to the Miami Heat.
Well, then.
Go get your
yeah, okay.
Wow.
Back to the chaos. We're back to the chaos. It was a little too, you know, clean and simple for a while there. Wow. Okay.
This is why we love the NBA draft, man.
Yeah.
This is why Albert and I do the chaos mock, because the mocks are never accurate enough. These things are super fluid, man. Look, I saw Kel'el twice this year live, and I walked away impressed when I saw him. He wasn't a perfect prospect by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy who was legit 7'1" with a legit 7'5" wingspan. Like, you can see it up close. It's hard to like put in perspective when you watch him on TV. He is gigantic. You know, the shooting, I think, you know, the 42.5% that we see on screen here, it was on about 1 attempt a game. He didn't shoot it well as a freshman. It's a little more theoretical, but there's definitely a base to work with. Just got to tinker with some of the hand stuff. But I mean, I think that, you know, this is a really interesting home run swing for them. I mean, he can, you know, play with Bam because, you know, theoretically he can stretch the floor. I think he even showed a little bit of passing this year. So I'm interested to see what he could do in some of those same short roll situations. He's good, you know, in that little area that Bam is with the floaters and whatnot. You know, he's got that little mid-range shot. He can hit the turnarounds. If Spo can get something out of him, man, like, oh my God. Oh my God. But that is going to do it for this trio. We are going to bring in our next group. We have the draft sickos coming back. We have Maxwell Steven, and we have Rowan Kent coming to the stage. Rowan, how are we doing, my man?
Doing great. This first half's been exactly what I expected by being nothing what I expected. So I'm excited to see what Philly is going to do. The Lakers, the Magic. It's been great. I can't say enough about how much I've enjoyed it. What about you?
The Kalel Ware pick is one of the most fascinating picks I can recall. But I think it's worth noting, like, you remember the rep that Nikola Jovic had coming over when the Heat picked him, and it was like, oh, he's kind of soft or whatever. And with Kalel Ware, I think the intel had largely been shed this season. Like, I think people have moved on from the idea of him.
It had to have been amazing for the Heat to take him.
Yeah, well, and like I think it was apparent. Like, he played hard, and like the thing I mentioned in my article about Kalel Ware is A, there's not a lot of guys who have outstanding defensive rebound rates that are low motor players. And B, like, I don't think the motor was the issue so much as it was a lot of just like technique stuff on defense.
Yeah.
Like placement and pick and roll coverage, knowing when to jump, knowing when to stay down. Like, those are the things that needed refinement. Miami, what a phenomenal pickup in a place where I might be going out on a limb here. Miami, generally one of the better coaching staffs in the NBA. So if you just need to find a guy's technique, that might be the place. But we've got Philly on the clock. We've got my close personal friend, Dalton Connect, still sitting on the board. I am begging the 76ers to do the right thing and take my man Dalton Connect, a sharpshooter, a ready-made guy on a team that is going to have loads of cap space and heaps of uncertainty. That's the direction I would go. Rowan, I'm going to toss it to you. Who do you like here for the Sixers?
I think Connect makes a lot of sense. I think Jared McCain, despite some of the size concerns, all that the Sixers have on their cap sheet is Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and a few tumbleweeds. So McCain can slot right in the backcourt, and he brings the kind of shooting and spacing that they would need. So he makes a lot of sense. He solidifies a really important spot for them that's a vacancy right now.
Maxwell, I can't hear you, brother. I think
just throw it to you. Wanted to get your pick on the Sixers.
No, all good. I mean, Tristan Da Silva still on the board. Jalen Tyson still on board. Big Jalen guy. Pacome Dadier, Deron Holmes, Tyler Smith. Man, I'm with Rowan. There's like, you take your pick, right? Like, even if you go guard, right? Like, I don't think that you're signaling that we're going to start a smaller guard along with Tyrese Maxey. Maybe they share minutes, but you could really take whatever direction that you want. I think that in a draft this draft has been dubbed like a bad draft or a flat draft. This has probably been one of the most fun drafts that I've ever seen, man. So like, if you can make it entertaining, I'm not gonna like, is it out of the realm of possibility that we see like a Tyler Kolek get taken here, or
I just don't think they would go guard. I think if they go guard,
a Keyshawn George or something, like,
yeah, I think if they go guard, it's more that like Jared McCain shooting style guard than like an on-ball guy. Just because I think it's so like, I mean, look at Scoot Henderson and the struggles that he had in year one, adapting to being like an on-ball point guard. Like, whoever you pick here, you're probably going to have to play, is my guess. And maybe not. Like, maybe they kind of have a feeling about how things are going to play out in free agency, how things are going to play out in the trade market, and they feel good. But my guess is you're probably going to need to do something with who you've got here. We've got Adam Silver approaching the podium. We should have the pick momentarily. The pick is in. Extremely excited to see where this one goes. My feed might be a little bit behind. Is he on the podium on your screen?
No, he's not.
Podium. All right.
I have Adam Gavoni talking frantically. It looks like into multiple cameras at the same time.
Been there.
They're showing Dalton Connect on the stream right now. Man, it's so
should we talk about them inviting like 40 guys to the green room this year?
No, I love it because I think it just makes it that much more interesting. Like, it kind of sucks for some of these dudes that are like at the top of big boards and they're falling, and like Dalton Connect's obviously pretty downtrodden right now, but I love the fact that it just adds some mystery to it, right? Like, it definitely just makes it seem a little bit more unpredictable. It's crazy. Like, the pick is in. There's no Adam Silver. It's just so crazy that Philadelphia has so many spots available to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's what makes
this could be anything.
That's what makes the select. It literally could. I mean, even with some teams that have had like full rosters and glaring needs and stuff like that, and like utter surety that they're probably going to get taken in this spot, those players have slid down the board. I think that this actually breaks pretty well for Philadelphia, as well as the next couple of picks too, right? Because there's some very good talent remaining on the board right now.
Yeah, there's
like really good talent.
If you're the Lakers too, like there's just a lot of guys that you feel like you can play immediately. Between McCain, Silva, Connect, like there's just a lot of those guys. Shireman, like there's a lot of those guys still kind of hanging around.
They're showing some Jared McCain on the screen here.
Yeah, we still got the pick is in. I've never seen the pick be in with such a delay. Here we go. We got Adam Silver.
There's a lot of camera focus on McCain.
All right, with the 16th pick,
I'm gonna guess it's McCain. That was a lot of screen time.
Yep. Okay, we're announcing the Wizards trade from earlier. So we're getting that out of the way.
It's important.
Got to announce those. And here we go. The pick is in.
And who is it? Do you know? Do you got it?
The Philadelphia 76ers select Jared McCain out of Duke.
Okay,
so they are going in the shooting guard direction. They are getting one of the premier shooters in this draft class. McCain, 41.5% from long range. Exceptional shooter. Short wingspan, 6'3.5" wingspan, but 203 pounds. Got that, as we said during the mock draft yesterday, that meaty frame.
He's a meaty man.
He's a meaty man. The meaty frame required of these smaller guards. Stellar rebounder for a guard. 5 boards per game, always getting it after on the glass. You might see the assist numbers, 1.9 per game. It might sound a little bit low, but he is a capable live dribble passer with both hands. I think with McCain, you have to view him like one of those old Kentucky guard prospects where he has the on-ball juice, but due to the roster construction was off the ball more often than you might expect.
Like a Tyrese Maxey, you might say, right?
Perhaps. Rowan, how are you feeling about the McCain pick here?
Yeah, I think to echo a lot of what you're saying, there's a lot that he still has to unlock his game. He played in a more specific role at Duke, but they're going to ask the right things, I think, of McCain early in his season in Philadelphia. He'll get a lot of open shots. Embiid, Maxey, they're both all-star, all-NBA level talents. There are going to be shots that come around off of the catch and shoot. It's one of the places where he was best this year. I'm really excited to not only see him potentially start. We obviously don't know how any of the free agency business will shake out, but I don't think you'd take someone this highly in the draft if you didn't expect them to play a pretty solid role in their rookie year. Whether that's off the bench or starting for the team, you would wonder a bit about their point of attack, some of their guard defense if you have Maxey next to McCain. But offensively, it can only help to open up a bit more space for both of the stars there. And I think it's a great pick. I think there's a lot of talent that might have been higher on my board that's still there. McCain's right in this range. And so for me, this makes me excited and checks a lot of the boxes for what the Sixers need.
One of the lower end comparisons I've been using for him is Seth Curry, who had the best season of his career playing off of Joel Embiid. So this is a really good fit. Jared McCain, the new school TikTok flair with the old school dog work ethic. The duality of man exists within Jared McCain. But also like a guy who's never been shy from the moment and just has that game where it can scale up or scale down. You need him to run the offense a little bit. He's more than capable. He sees the floor well, makes good decisions. And if you need him to scale back, he's more than comfortable doing that. He's not a guy who's going to sit in the corner and moan and stand still with his hands at his waist when he doesn't have the ball. So I like it. Steven, where are you thinking overall with the fit?
I think the fit, it works well, right? Like as much as I could not stand watching Duke's offense like all year long, what we saw from Jared McCain is an easy projectable role for him in the NBA. We saw him play with a pretty ball dominant guard at Duke alongside of him off of the ball, right? So probably going to see a little bit of that with Maxey in Philadelphia. We saw him play with some dynamic big men. Joel Embiid kind of embodies multiple different types of big man all in one package, right? So I think that we saw a little bit of that away from the basket stuff with Kyle Filipowski. You can see the same thing with Joel Embiid, as well as like a pretty efficient around the rim finisher. Again, same thing with Joel Embiid. So easy to project what Jared McCain can do on this team because of who else is on this roster. Just with only a couple people, even B-Ball Paul, right? Like a pretty versatile kind of big man, more defense, hustle, rebound type guy. Duke had that type of player as well. So I think that this is a smart fit. It's also, from all accounts, like a good person to bring into.
Love Jared McCain. Like
exactly.
I think we try to, at least I know, like speaking for Steven and I, we try to keep that kind of stuff close to the vest because you never know what's what. But like, I do not know a single person that has been to a Duke practice or has been around the Duke team that does not have exceptional things to say about Jared McCain. Not just good things about Jared McCain, exceptional things about Jared McCain. So I think you're getting one of the premier kind of work ethic guys in the league too, which is a big part of the reason why I think a lot of people love the Miami fit. Myself included. I thought that was a possible landing spot for him. We've got the Lakers on the clock here. It's no
they're
secret who I think
high-fiving.
they should go with. They're high-fiving. Rowan, who's your guy for the Lakers?
JJ Redick's pretty happy.
I mean, if they're high-fiving, it means they know LeBron is staying, and there's only one thing that means. No, I think that this
Bronny James.
No, maybe later. I
it.
think I could see a handful of players. I think Connect is someone who they did not expect to be in this range, I think, based on a lot of conventional draft boards. So
that's a JJ Redick guy, right? Like,
I mean,
hello.
JJ might see himself in Connect. I think Connect can play the same kind of role that JJ did. You'll have, as we just talked about, gravity from stars. You get the same gravity from both James and Davis for any shooter that's around them. You have a solid defensive infrastructure with players too. So I think Connect would be who I'd choose here.
Steven, what about you?
I think it makes too much sense. One, it's a good fit. Not only just for roster construction, but okay.
Oh, it's a trade. Psych.
But of course, well, they're high-fiving for a pick, so I wonder what the package is. Do they get a player? Hopefully they got a player.
So he was announcing a previous trade, and now the Lakers pick is in. And with the 17th pick in the NBA draft, the Lakers
so it's not a trade. It's got to be Dalton
Connect from Tennessee.
JJ Redick's.
Pew, pew, pew. Second year in a row, a no stone unturned prospect goes in the first round. Cheap plug. Dalton Connect, a 21.7 point per game scorer, good rebounder. Defense, obviously the main concern. Steven, I'm going to let you touch on his defense in a second because you did a really good job of writing about that in a column you did on Dalton Connect. But a lights out scorer, excellent frame for the NBA game, 6'6.5" with a 6'9" wingspan, 212 pounds. Phenomenal athlete, a guy who can jump out of the gym and has some real power to him.
Yeah,
Steven,
I
I'm
think
gonna let you touch on the defense because I know we're higher on it. But.
I think the defense, look, I'm not going to sit here and try to sell you that he's going to be a positive NBA level defender day one. But I will say in the 1 year that he did put a concerted effort to improve on that end, right, while also being the entire offense for a Tennessee team that had poor spacing around him from every other position, I was very impressed. There are some things to like. One, he's got good size, right? So he's very strong, and he is a good athlete, not sneaky. He is a good athlete. So all of those things help him, right? The wingspan is positive, which you like to see with a lot of these prospects in this class. I just think Maxwell, like, he's going to be a good team defender. I think that he's quick enough to stay out in front of some people. I don't think that he is going to be like extremely switchable, but if you're talking about like some power wings, I think that he could do a good job of, switch, recovery, show, all those different types of things on the defensive end. And look, JJ Redick, his head coach, right? Not the best defender, but was able to sustain a long NBA career because of his premier shooting, but also improving to be at least a neutral team defender for a lot of playoff level teams.
Yep. Yeah. Connect. The defense was not any worse necessarily when he was on the court. Just one of those high BPM dunks and threes guys that tends to stick as a role player. Rowan, you had mentioned that this was kind of the pick that you wanted to see. I'm going to toss it to you for Orlando. Who is the guy you're targeting here if you're the Magic with this next pick?
I think the Magic, they surprised me. I had some maybe more modest expectations for them. Paolo Franz arrived. I feel like De'Ron Holmes. I know they have Wendell Carter Jr. I think that he's played well. I do wonder if when they're thinking about the rest of their future, if they start to look at not only team need, but just like their cap fit, trying to fit guys in. They have a pretty chock full guard rotation and wing rotation, despite the need for shooting. And Holmes is going to come cheaper than Carter. And he has at least enough shooting touch that you can sell yourself based on the other great things he does. So it might be a zig where some expect a zag there.
They're losing Bataze too in free agency, right?
And so they do need some backup minutes there that they could eventually turn into a cheaper but potentially as effective center for them.
That's interesting because, yeah, I think the center position's been talked about a little bit. And the other position that's been talked about with them quite a bit was like shooting from the point guard position is something I've harped on with their roster all year. McCain is gone. Bub is gone. Like, maybe you go for a Keyshawn George here. Like, that could
Miami product, option. Right?
Yeah. Just to hop across the state a little bit. I don't know Florida geography. I don't believe it's across the state. I think Orlando is sort of in the middle of the state, if I'm not mistaken.
It's more.
Oh,
more
yeah.
central.
I know my stuff. Yeah. I know my geography.
Yeah, you know your shapes.
Geography podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're Steven, big on geography here.
Yeah, Steven, who are you targeting for Orlando here? Because I kind of like a Baylor Shireman for them here. I like a dribble pass shoot guy who's going to be insulated with all the other long defenders that they've already got.
I like a Baylor Shireman. Personally, I like a Jalen Tyson. I think that he could fit this team as well. Good size, showed good defense while he played at Texas Tech. Good three-point shooter, showed the ability to improve as a ball handler, scale down the roll, really open the floor for Franz Wagner and Apollo Banchero. Can play off of the guards as well. Maybe even give you some jumbo kind of like ancillary playmaking for specific rotations because of what we saw in California. It's really tough, man. Like Isaiah Collier is a guy that has been okay. Pick is in. Is he at the podium?
He is at the podium. And the Orlando Magic are taking Tristan da Silva. So like
that was going to be the next. Yep.
Yeah, shooting. So you were going to talk about Tristan da Silva. So Steven, I'm going to kick it to you since Adam Silver was so rude to interrupt you.
I know.
He's there. He's not even. Someone got to get in his earpiece and tell him that we're doing the stream over here, Adam Silver.
We all have a job to do today, right? So I mean, I'm not no shade towards Silver. He's doing the best that he can with what he's got. Sham's got to step your game up on who we're talking about here in the stream. TDS is like probably one of the most liked prospects from all NBA teams. It's kind of crazy that he's available for 18. But what this does, right, we've seen Paulo Banchero take on a lot of playmaking responsibilities. Orlando likes to do that. Franz Wagner is another guy who can play the two a lot for Orlando and the three. What Da Silva does is he kind of keeps that lineup versatile while also being a really good shooter in his own right. We were talking about the value of shooting. And look, with the front office that Orlando has, we know that they value size a lot, right? So I'm not surprised that they went with a guy who we talk about big players in the draft. I feel like the amount of humanity that Tristan da Silva has often goes under discussed. But you're talking about a 6'9.5" foot shooter who also rebounds pretty decently and showed a pretty versatile offensive game. Not going to lead the playmaking charge, but also a good connective passer, good decision maker. As you can see here on the screen, solid defender, not going to be asked to do more than what he's capable of. I think with Orlando continuing to make their push for the playoffs, this is just a smart move, man. Like a very versatile, capable, efficient on all ends of the floor guy.
Yeah, I think Da Silva is sort of like a no-fail guy in a sense, where even if he doesn't hit a super high-end outcome, teams are going to continue to give opportunities to a guy who's 6'9.5" that can shoot the ball like he does consistently in that 38 and up range from long range. Older guy at 23, but just really smart, knows how to play basketball. Rowan, you are a Colorado guy. Colorado native, I guess I should say. I don't know if you're native from there. I just know that you're there.
Not native, but I'll take it.
Well, I'm lying on the stream right now. But Rowan, you've spent some time in the Colorado vicinity. Give us your thoughts on Tristan da Silva.
Yeah, I had a chance to see Da Silva live when I went up for the Colorado State game. What really stuck out is maybe it wasn't his best like on paper performance, but there were so many things he did well that don't show up, as cliche as it is, in the box score. Being able to help the offense and defensive scheme stay tight. He was setting good screens. I like the pick. I think that behind both Wagner and Banchero, you're going to need guys who can keep doing what they're doing. They'll obviously not be able to get a third really great wing or forward, but that shooting is going to open it up in any lineup where you're staggering those guys. The fact that Jalen Suggs was able to become a plus shooter changed the complexion of their team. And not having to have him on the floor with one or both of them all the time, being able to just switch the lineups a bit, you're not going to find many guys that size who can do that. So I think it's a great pick. It's not one that maybe a lot of people could have mocked, but I really like it. I think that it'll fit with this team. And as an older player, De Silva will fill a role that's really effective for the Magic.
So with the Raptors now on the clock at 19, Keyshawn George is a name we've heard linked to them quite a bit. With Scotty Barnes signing that rookie max extension, it has never been more clear that the plan is to build this team around Scotty Barnes. They have Emmanuel Quickley, so they've got some nice stuff at the guard spot. Jakob Poeltl might not be long for the Raptors universe.
RJ Barrett.
RJ Barrett. So you've got sort of another mid-rangey, downhill-ish wing player. So you really need just
power
spacing
wing
on this team. I don't know how long Kelly Olynyk, Chris Boucher has been there for 75 years at this point. But they've got Gary Trent. It seems like they're missing like a medium-sized shooter is a phrase I like to use. I think a guy like Keyshawn George kind of fits that. I think a Baylor Shireman fits that. I think there's just some interesting sort of shooting bets if you wanted to go more upside. A guy like Bacom Daddier is a guy I wouldn't mind them rolling the dice on here. Or if they want to go even bigger, play some jumbo lineups, maybe you'll go Kyle Filipowski here. Those are some guys I'm eyeing. Anybody sticking up to either of you?
Yeah, I think that the Keyshawn George is one that, like you mentioned, there's some smoke to that. Man, I'm big on Jalen Tyson, but I think the Keyshawn George fit makes a lot more sense because it just keeps the rest of the floor open. I'm becoming more of like a Baylor Shireman guy. Is this where we finally start getting into the Terrence Shannon Jr. conversation?
Sure.
Right? He kind of fits like the rest of like that guard wing, like a dribble guy, real strong, athletic, could probably give you some plus defense with a scaled down role, not a high usage, just ball dominant downhill guy. Maybe this is the range where we start seeing Terrence Shannon Jr. being mentioned. Now, there's reasons why a lot of people probably don't know a whole heck of a lot about him because of legal issues that he was facing throughout the year. All of that is now behind him, and now we're projecting him as a basketball player. I think that this is probably where we start looking at the beginning of the Terrence Shannon Jr. range. What do you think about the Terrence Shannon Jr. starting to come up in conversations now, Rowan?
I think that makes sense. Anytime there are things that happen off of the basketball court, it takes the forefront of a conversation. As a basketball player, Shannon can fit into that mid-sized shooter that they're looking for. He played a big role on a good team that was playing close to that positionless basketball at Illinois. So I think he can work on this team. Outside of Barnes, we talked about a few guys. I know the Raptors might be a little bit of the middle path right now. We don't know exactly where they're going to go other than build around Barnes. And you could do a lot worse than taking Shannon to provide that spacing, to provide some shot creation there next to him. So I think that this is probably the start of his range, and he'll be looked at towards the end, if not earlier, of the first round.
Maxwell, I want to ask you this question. The pick is in, just real quick.
Great.
They obviously need a big man. What do we think is this Missy territory?
I would go Duran Holmes or Misi if that's the direction. I think Duran is a much better fit here just because he shoots the ball a little bit now. Even if he's not like a great shooter because of this sort of handoff dribble game, you can sort of play 5 out with him and run inverted pick and roll. Like there's other ways that you can create space with Duran Holmes if he's your big man. So that's the direction I would go. If I'm married to the idea of taking a big, Duran is the one I would be targeting here. So we are recapping the Pascal Siakam trade.
You have
from
to
this offseason,
anytime,
which now's the time.
anytime you can.
We've
Yep.
got Adam Silver at the podium, pick 19, Toronto Raptors.
Let's see what he does, man.
Jacoby Walter.
That was
from
another
Baylor.
name. That was probably poor podcasting and showmanship on our part, because Jacoby came into the season as a top prospect, saw his stock fall a little bit, but kind of like past that, like late lottery to the early 20s, that seemed to be kind of his sweet spot. Maxwell, what do you think?
Yeah, so with Jacoby, a guy just did a deep dive on. He reminds me quite a bit statistically of another Raptors player in Gary Trent Jr. Their numbers spread themselves out quite similarly. I think the difference with Jacoby Walter is that the role he was put in was exceedingly difficult. And the guys who, even if you're looking at these numbers and you're saying, wow, under 38% from the field and only 34% from three, and he's supposed to be a shooter, he did really well on high difficulty threes. He takes the threes an NBA three-point shooter has to take, flying off of screens, running into a shot in transition, having defenders draped around him. Given the fact that he's also not like a total shrimp physically and has a 6'10" wingspan, there is hope for him to become more of a 3-and-D 2-3 wing, where right now I'm just sort of viewing him in the like Luke Kennard-y, like
Trey
sort
Man.
of, Luke Kennard, like Gary Trent, like those are the kind of guys
Norman
I
Powell.
see him being most similar to. But with the frame of the body, I think maybe you coach him up, he can be a little bit more than that. Passing is okay. I don't love it. I would like to see a little bit more for somebody that projects to be sort of a wing, like a two-size guy in the NBA. But Rowan, how do you feel about Jacoby Walter? He's not a guy that I've gotten to talk to you specifically. Like I haven't gotten to talk to you about Jacoby. So really curious to see how you kind of feel about his game.
I really like Walter's game. I think that he had to take some lumps. This Baylor team is probably going to produce 2 NBA players. At the same time, I wouldn't say this was the year that the team might have wanted. Walter had to struggle through some tougher shooting stretches, and I think it dulled a bit of the luster that he really showed when he was in high school. The high-level shot making that I saw there kept me really invested even in the tougher months. I was holding on to my stock even if there was a bum rush to sell. I find this fit really interesting because I guess he does have that size to be maybe that mid-range size shooter, but next to either RJ Barrett or Gary Trent Jr., it seems like there might be an odd man out situation eventually. Not in year one.
Sure.
I don't know if they might have drafted Walter to do that, but it's something they'll have to address eventually. Barrett makes a bit more money. Trent Jr. might be a bit easier to move. So I think this is a pick that can be really exciting. Walter will have less on his plate and will be able to do more of what he's good at.
Yeah, I also think he's a guy that, like, given sort of the wing and like guard depth that you have, like there's no real pressure to play him. Like if he comes in and he's not, meeting all expectations, you don't have to worry about like playing him this year. You can play him in the G League, assuming like Grady Dick has taken a step forward. Between like those guys, Bruce Brown, if you keep him, DJ Carton was the guy they had on two-way that actually quite like. Like I think DJ Carton's good. I know that we're
getting the sicko territory here.
NBA Fringes podcast. I think DJ Carton's actually an NBA player. But yeah, they've got a lot of depth at that position too. So it's also sort of low stress for him. But if it pans out, he is a guy that is super comfortable playing off the ball, moving off of off-ball actions and operating without the ball in his hands. And then you just hope that, like Rowan mentioned, without having that like giant workload that he had at Baylor, maybe the defensive intensity and consistency can step up a little bit. Pick is in for Cleveland. Cleveland is going to be the last pick that we do as a group. I'm going to throw out a lot of the same names again that we've been talking about: Jalen Tyson, Baylor Shireman, Kyle Filipowski. Anybody that you guys are liking for the Cavs here?
Johnny Furphy was a name that we had kind of floated out within our collective around this range. I think that this could be where he starts. I mean, Cleveland, is it too far away from Illinois to where this Terrence Shannon Jr. conversation just kind of continues? He is probably the player that I am most interested in seeing where he goes, just because of the kind of the cloud that had been kind of surrounded his draft stock throughout the year. There wasn't very many forward-facing outlets that were putting him out, you know what I mean? And some of the ones that were, the ranges were all over the place, right? Now, like, once his name was cleared coming into the later portion of the draft cycle, that didn't stop the murkiness at all. I mean, we were seeing in like the teens to like the mid to, early to mid second round. So I think that he's going to be interesting around this range. I know that they have guards. I know that there's rumors that Donovan Mitchell is kind of be the guy. Maybe they move off of another guard. Is Tyler Kolek like a stealth name in this range if they move another guard? Like they like
maybe? Yeah.
Collier is another one. I mean, there's this kind of breaking in a unique way. I'm not going to say like this is great for Cleveland, the way that the board has fallen, because now we're starting to kind of see like that leveling of the top of the board is kind of smoothing out a little bit, but there seems to be an apparent need along the perimeter, and there seems to be good talent here. Like, do they do an upside pick with Pacome Daddier potentially?
I think that's on the table as well. We are mid-commercial break, so we're not going to get a Taco Bell Chiron announcement of the pick, I don't think.
Yeah, Nikola Jokic. Speaking of Nikola,
sure.
What do you OKC at the tail end?
A little weird
now,
to me.
When Corey and I did the show with John Fanta, I was asked him specifically about Topic, and I was saying, what do you think of the possibility that now he is sliding out? He said there's absolutely no way that he slides out of the lottery because there is a GM who is going to laugh all the way to the bank if Nikola Topic falls to him, and that is Sam Presti. Like, just was so confident in the way that he was going to fall. He's like, I am telling you right now, there is no way that he falls out of the lottery because Sam Presti will snatch him up. I was talking to our guy, Dylan Huntsinger from the Topic Thunder podcast. I was like, Topic Thunder, like that's great marketing, right? For your show. Seems to be kind of up in the air on how he feels about it, but we're back from commercial break now, Maxwell. They're showing go ahead.
I want to throw this one to Rowan. Rowan, who would be like your surprise pick here? Like if you had to do something a little unconventional with this pick for the Cavs, what would you do? Mine's Daddier, but that's me.
I think if you're really eschewing convention, like Ryan Dunn, they really like defense. And you have to surround Mitchell and Garland with a defensive infrastructure for them to be most effective.
They're showing Woj on the screen. That's interesting.
He got drafted?
Woj is the pick. Yeah, it feels an interesting need for them. I did not see them going in the journalistic route. All right, we've got Adam Silver up on the screen here. Pick 20 to Cleveland. They are selecting Jalen Tyson.
I love it. My guy.
Perfect fit. Some nice physicality, some shot making, a little bit of defense, a little bit of everything here for the Cleveland Cavaliers with Jalen Tyson, a guy that we quite like. Quick thoughts before we move on to our next group of hosts.
13th guy on my board, absolute steal. I think that he's an NBA player for a long time. I think that the scalability questions are a little bit silly based on what we've seen him do at other places other than Cal. I just think that he's too good at too many things to not make it in the NBA. Cleveland did a great job here.
Rowan, quick thoughts?
He doesn't have to play in a big role right away. They could retain Okoro and get some of maybe the same positive outcomes that they get from Karis LeVert. I think that Tyson is going to give them creation in secondary actions that they need. When shots weren't falling for Mitchell, when Garland was hurt, we saw what they were lacking. Tyson's there to pick up that slack and to keep them contending, whether or not they stick with this core four, but I think it indicates that they feel confident that they could.
Absolutely. Well, let's get Paige, Albert, and Ignacio back up on the stage. Real quick, according to our consensus, the board, while we get those folks up here, the best available: Kyle Filipowski, Deron Holmes, Keyshawn George, Isaiah Collier, Pacome Daddier, Tyler Smith, Ryan Dunn, Tyler Kolek, and Johnny Furphy. We are going to do a line change here. We will be back on day 2 of the draft. Albert, welcome back aboard. Take it from here, my man.
In a wild night of combinations and draft picks and team matching and all this stuff, what a delight it is that I get to be hosting and on screen with Paige and Ignacio, a trio that's never happened before.
Why not start it now, right? Why not do it now?
Are we having fun yet? Like this is what we've been waiting for, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's been wild.
Just an unbelievable draft we
Great
watched so far, and it's funny because Corey and I did the chaos mock draft, and people were vicious in the comments.
Like, why are you guys doing this? This makes no sense.
I mean, we had people questioning our intelligence, our credibility, all that stuff, and it just turns out reality is way more intense than anything we could have concocted. But just guys, we're at the point now. We're at 21 in the draft. We have the New Orleans Pelicans on the clock, and this is a weird team, right? A team that they've got a lot of players on this team. It seems like they're starting to ask some questions about the Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson pairing. We've got Jonas Valanciunas entering unrestricted free agency. We've got what else do we have? A lot's going on, right? Also, CJ McCollum entering, I think, year 12 for him. So, guys, I wanted to maybe we'll start with Ignacio. Ignacio, give me some thoughts on your end in terms of some directions that you feel like the Pelicans should be going, because they are at an interesting point in terms of their development as a team.
Yeah, I think they are too invested at this point in what they have in their veteran core, even though Ingram and Zion are not nearly near the end of their careers, but they have been in the NBA for a while. And I think they have invested. They have too many veteran pieces to think that they would go in a direction where they not try to add to win right now, or where they not add to try to get over the hump, to try to get to the second round. Now, at the 21st pick, it's kind of hard to think that only one player, like adding one player at the 21st pick, like really puts you over the hump. But they can maximize and try to fill holes that they have on the roster. And for me, considering that you have Kyle Filipowski, you have Deron Holmes, who can, be a presence there, I think they probably go with a big here. And instead of paying Valanciunas, we are seeing the contracts that are giving out to role players these days. So instead of spending $20 million on Valanciunas, I think they get a player for way less and try to spend that money elsewhere.
Well, Ignacio, looks like you nailed it. Looks like the New Orleans Pelicans have selected Yves Missi from Baylor.
Wow. Okay.
Right at the screen too, and I was like, what?
Paige, if you can give us a little bit of your scouting report on Missi. I think he's a really interesting guy. Me saying that he's interesting is me being nice. He wasn't my favorite center prospect in this class, but Paige, if you can give us a little bit of how you view Missi and how you think he's going to be able to contribute to this Pelican squad.
Yeah, kind of what Ignacio was saying. Like, you kind of want a piece that, is not as expensive as, keeping Valanciunas, right? And it's actually like him being a center. He runs the floor extremely hard. I think he has a really great motor in this class. He's also a prospect, like he's raw, but I think with the Pelicans front office and pieces around him, he's going to be able to, grow and learn from. And I think he's also a great prospect. Like, I had him like on my board for like the Suns to draft. Like, he's also a great lob threat. And he also played, I think with him and Jacoby Walter too, like we kind of saw him, playing with a point guard that can kind of do a little bit of everything, create off the dribble, in the pick and roll, like CJ McCollum. Like, I think that'd be a great dynamic duo for them. So like, I think this is a great pick for them.
Yeah. I mean, and Ignacio, let me throw it to you after. I feel like, okay, so for me, if I'm being honest, Missi was not my favorite prospect just because I get the appeal. 7-footer, plus wingspan, not huge plus, but still plus. You take the 2 inches, right? But the biggest thing with Missi, I was worried about the hands, right? The thing with him is like I felt like there are like aspects of his game that are a little bit obtuse I think he needs some fine tuning, and maybe this is the situation where he gets to kind of do that. But at the same time, we talked about Valanciunas probably leaving. He's an older guy. Maybe they're feeling like they want to get younger. Ignacio, if you can talk a little bit about how you've viewed Misi and how you feel about this fit here.
I'm gonna be really quick because I'm scared that the Woj bomb thing is going to go off at any second. But for me, Missy, in terms of being a replacement for Valanciunas, kind of scares me because I think Valanciunas gave you a bit of floor spacing that you need next to Zion. At least he was able to keep the defenders honest, and they had to go and contest the 1.5 3-pointers he took per game. I don't think you're going to get that with Missy. So it's kind of an awkward fit, but we'll see if they can do without.
Almost missed it. You almost missed it.
You never really get used to the Woj bombs. It's like
no, it really gets
yeah.
Up. But okay, we have some trade details here. Looks like Denver is trading up to 22. They're sending 28, 56, and 2 future seconds to Phoenix to have the right to make this selection here at 22. First off, Paige, instant reaction of your team not making a pick here.
It's interesting. I thought they were actually going to trade up, so they actually went the opposite way. So, but I mean, I'm gonna put my trust into, Matt, Michigan State alum, got to go with my guy. I think he's making the right choice. I think hopefully at 28 they get a center and then a point guard. And Tyler Kolek's still on the board, so I would hope they would get him. So I think we'll see though. That's my hope though.
Speaking of Matt Ishbia, he came out today saying that they wouldn't be trading Kevin Durant and that they will be competing for a title this year. I thought it was weird that he had to make sure to include the this year part. Like, were we not aware that they were going to try to win the title this year? Was there some confusion there? But with Denver now being on the board, Ignacio, any thoughts on who you think Denver might be targeting here?
I think this is let me start for Phoenix. Maybe they saw the guy that they wanted go with the pick before in Missy, and they said, okay, let's drop down and get another big there, or whoever else is or the best guy on our board. For Denver, there's been a lot of rumors about Deron Holmes for a while. They apparently loved him, and they I don't know how much can I say, but they really liked him. That was the smoke that was coming out of Denver. So I wonder if, like, close call with the Pelicans, they could have taken him there. We cannot waste another second. Holmes is going to come out the board at any second. Those two would be my predictions of what every team thought going into this trade. Now, probably now that I said it, I probably jinxed it, and they're not going to pick Holmes. But if they do, I'll look awesome. So
it would be hilarious if you predicted Holmes and then they took like Isaiah Collier or something.
Yeah, Tyler Coley.
But Ignacio, I think the point that you're making about Duran's such an interesting prospect, right? A guy who some of us, we thought he was going to come out last year, decided to go back to school. I think situation got a little bit better for him. He got to showcase more of his game. A guy who has a really diverse offensive game, right? With the outside shooting, just able to put the ball on the deck, obviously with the rim protection, stuff like that. I think it's a really interesting option, but also it's important for us to note that at this point in the draft, we still have a lot of guys, and with this, having this been like a weird draft, we still have a lot of guys that were pretty high on our boards that are still up there. And just to name a couple, I mean, a lot of us thought Keyshawn George would have been gone by now. We thought his floor was 19 to Toronto, but they went the Walter route, which I understand. I don't think it's crazy for us to see Toronto being interested in Walter. Kyle Filipowski still on the board. We definitely heard some smoke about him falling a little bit, but also Filipowski could be an interesting option here for Denver. Ryan Dunn for Virginia. Like I mentioned, Isaiah Collier. Paige, if you can, what's one name here that's like really sticking out to you as a guy that you didn't think would be lasting this long?
Yeah, I think Kyle Filipowski for one, Isaiah Collier, Tyler Smith still on the board, Jalen Tyson. Like, I feel like there's a lot of names that as a collective we kind of had in this range already, but Kyle Filipowski probably more higher on some people's boards. Oh, there we go.
Ignacio with the magic touch tonight. The Denver Nuggets, as you said, as you predicted, have selected Deron Holmes out of Dayton. I mean, well, number one, obviously, you know, the old saying goes, where there is smoke, there is fire, right? And so everything that we had heard heading into this draft was that Deron had a promise. We had heard that Denver was really into him. And then, you know, just looking at how the board fell, and like you said, Ignacio, maybe the Pelicans were sitting there and maybe their guy had already been gone. And so they said, let's move back and we'll give Denver this opportunity to take the guy that they've really liked. Paige, I know we cut you off before, but also if you can, give us some of your thoughts on Deron as well.
Yeah. First, though, like I'm seeing on the screen, like Deron Holmes and like, you know, the Suns banner. I can only see this in like 5 years, like biggest draft mistake by Suns front office in like 5 years. But you know, Deron, he chose to come back to school at Dayton. Really kind of showed he improved his shooting numbers. Was in like the 92nd percentile as a spot up shooter, I think, this season. Displayed more passing feel, playmaking, and also like with the modern NBA too. Like we've seen, you know, these offenses that really just excel with having a creative big man. So I think this is an awesome pick. And what's better than Deron to learn from, you know, one of the best centers of all time?
Oof. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I like the size with him, 6'10", plus wingspan. Just the versatility to his offensive game is just so interesting. And you take a guy like Deron and you put him on a team, like you just said, Paige, and he gets to do like a masterclass apprenticeship under Jokic, and he'll just get to learn and grow under him. That's such an enticing situation for him. And I feel like it's situationally for Deron, I don't think it could have gone much better than for him to end up on this Nuggets team and potentially maybe even be able to contribute in year one, right? Like Denver's been looking for a backup center, right? To, you know, give Jokic some time off so he doesn't have to play so much. And if you bring in a guy like Deron with his versatility, he becomes a really interesting option. And obviously the rim protection as well. With that being said, the Milwaukee Bucks are on the clock now, right? And this is a really, what's the word I'm looking for? Old roster. This team could use an injection of youth, I would say. And I think, you know, with the situation they're in, and recently Doc Rivers on the pod with Bill Simmons even talked about how, you know, Dame Lillard came into last season really out of shape because he was expecting a trade, wasn't able to work out. But I think Milwaukee Bucks fans are going to be looking at this season as the revenge season, right? I think a lot of their fans are probably thinking maybe it was a missed opportunity, right? With Giannis getting hurt right before the playoffs. So guys, if we can, and we can start with Ignacio, with them needing an injection of youth and them needing just rotation players, who are some guys that you think are pretty high on their board and would make a lot of sense here?
I look at who is going, which contracts are coming off the books for the Bucks and who played the most minutes. And I think both Malik Beasley and Jay Crowder had a ton of minutes for the Bucks. And so I don't think they are going, even though I think their kind of lead initiator beyond Dame Lillard is not really there in terms of a perimeter guy. And so they could look at like a backup point guard, especially with also Pat Beverly also going as a free agent. But I would say that with those two guys, Beasley and Crowder, I think they are going to need minutes at the 2 and the 3. So I would say, like, of course, I'm biased because I follow international prospects and I follow this guy from very early, but Pacome Daddier is a guy that I absolutely love, that I think he has the size because he's 6'8", he's strong. He had one of the best combines at his position, definitely the best combine in terms of international players. But also the leap level of competition. He comes from the German league, which is a lower level than a Spanish league or some of the top leagues in Europe. but I do like him there because of the versatility, the size. I also look at a guy like Keyshawn George just because I think every indicator speaks of him becoming an elite shooter.
Yeah.
And I think obviously when you look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, you always want guys who can shoot, and he also has the size. And I think, you know, he had a growth spurt not too long ago, so he's still growing into his body. He's still relearning basketball a bit. I know Paige has been around him there at Miami. So but it's a guy that I think from day one, even with his youth, from day one, he comes into the NBA and he adds value at a certain spot, which is shooting, which is value from day one, is something that the Bucks really need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking
Oh,
of
sorry. Go
dribbling,
ahead, Paige.
he was just on the screen just dribbling a basketball where he's sitting.
But you know, Ignacio, I love the Daddier call, right? A guy who played with Juan Nunez, right? Was in a really good situation, but also Keyshawn George, right? A guy that's really interesting. A guy that is one of my favorite guys in this class. A guy that I actually had 10th on my board, which I know is really high, and it's kind of a pattern for me where if you're like 6'8" and you shoot the ball really well, I'm going to put you in my top 10 and get roasted for it every single year, as I had Jet Howard in my top 10 last year. But I think these options are really interesting, right? But with that being said, it looks like the pick is in. We're still waiting. Before the pick does come in, though, Paige, any thoughts from you on who you think they might be targeting here?
Yeah, I'm with you on George. I think this year with Miami, it was honestly kind of rough all around. Like, he didn't really get to showcase what he's really capable of. Like, I've seen him in practices. The guy doesn't miss. He loves basketball. He also has, you know, really good playmaking feel, I think. And he didn't really have the ball in his hands a lot. You know, you had Wooga, Nigel Pack. So he was kind of slated, you know, more off ball when he can actually do a lot with the ball in his hands that I've seen. So I think the Bucks getting him at 23 would be awesome.
No, absolutely, Paige. Go ahead.
He was 5 foot. The first time I watched him, it was in a FIBA tournament. He was, I think, 15 years old, and he was 5'11". He was playing point guard in a terrible Switzerland team. I think they finished like 20 out of 25 in Division V U16 FIBA. And
also,
then he grows to 6'8" in like 4 years. It's incredible. I think there's still another layer that he can get to because of that point guard background, and because, again, I think he's still growing into his body.
All right, the pick is in. Looks like the Milwaukee Bucks have selected AJ Johnson.
Wow.
Illawarra Hawks, formerly of Donda Academy.
You're just like going off on George.
Oh man, I can't even imagine the euphoria that Tyler Metcalf is feeling right now. Just an unbelievable pick. But also, guys, it's crazy. We said that this team is old and they need an injection of youth, and they get AJ Johnson, 19 years old, out of Australia, from the Illawarra Hawks, a guy who, I mean, Corey's put up the graphic here of his numbers. Not the most impressive numbers, 2.9 points, 1 point, but the numbers don't tell the whole story. And I think with AJ Johnson, a guy who coming into this season, you know, there was some hype about him going to Australia and being a part of that like whole Next Stars program. A guy who's really close, you know, considers himself a brother to Jalen Green, but a really interesting guard wing prospect, a guy who I think has a lot of, you know, on-ball equity. And I think he's going to be able to be a really interesting playmaker, a guy who can really handle the rock and go get a bucket. He's still really, really young. I think there's a lot of potential to him. Paige, if you can, give us some of your thoughts on AJ Johnson and how you think this fit makes sense.
Yeah, I think with AJ Johnson too, he was committed to Texas before he went to the NBL. He was one of the best recruits in the entire class coming into the season. And I think he was kind of misused in a way with the Hawks. Obviously, his numbers aren't enticing by any means, you know, but he had a great showing at the NBA Draft Combine. Always scares me.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Paige, but I've got bad news for me. The New York Knicks are trading the 24th pick to the Washington Wizards, is what's happening here. It looks like the Wizards are trading back in, or I don't even know what the details of the trade are, but it looks like they're moving up to 24 to make their third selection here in the first round. I wonder who it is that they're looking to get here, but a really interesting night for the Wizards, right? I mean, they started off with Alexander Sarr, then they see an opportunity, they go and get Bub Carrington, who I love. I think was an unbelievable pick. And now they're moving up again to 24 to grab somebody. Paige, I know we cut you off. Who do you think the Wizards might be looking at here at 24?
Yeah, honestly, like, shout out to the Wizards for making all these moves. I know all of us kind of were like, what are they doing? Trading Dunny, like, what direction are they going in? But I mean, I think it's paying off for them, and they did have a plan all along for once. I think Kevin McCullough maybe would be kind of a good pick here. I know the injury concerns are warranted. Jalen Tyson would be a good pick here, I think. Joe
I think he already went.
Oh, he did go.
Yeah,
he did go, but I would like him here if he actually was still on the board.
It looks like we got some details of the trade. Looks like the Knicks are trading the 24th pick to Washington for number 26 and number 51. So it looks like the Knicks are trying to collect some assets here. Don't know for what, but Ignacio, any thoughts from you on who you think the Wizards might be targeting here?
First off, I think moving up 2 spots for a late second, I think it's great value. And I think something the Wizards really seem that they did in this draft is that they identified that teams viewed this draft as a quote-unquote weak draft. And so making moves is a bit cheaper than it would have been in previous years. So you have that opportunity there, and I applaud them for that. I think the reasonable thing would be to think like they went big with their first selection. They went guard with their second selection. They, let Danny go, so they don't have that, logjam of wings. So they might go with a wing here. And I think we talked about them already. There's Kashon George there. There's Pacom Daddier. Even Ryan Dunn, if you want to go all defense. Furphy, if you want to add more shooting, even though I personally have Kashon over Furphy. But, there's a couple of directions. I think there's a lot of wings at this point in the draft where it really makes sense to have your pick of your favorite one.
Yeah, I mean, earlier in our pre-draft show, I had given this idea where I thought the Spurs should just go all France and just go target Risa Shea and Salon and all that stuff. But maybe the Wizards, right? They've got Koulibaly there. They got Alexander Sarr. Maybe they go get Daddier, and they're like I said before, right? Like, we just speak French. Like, you can't beat us because you don't know what we're doing, because everyone on our team's going to speak French. Could be interesting.
Yeah, and good sales pitch to whenever Wemby is a free agent, like 9 years from now. Hey, we speak French. That's our second language around the building. So come here.
Come to San Antonio.
But as we mentioned, Keyshawn George could definitely be an option here. Also, his name's come up a bunch already, but a guy like Johnny Furphy, a guy who, I think a lot of people thought he might have been gone by now, but also this could be exactly his range. We've heard Kevin McCullough, Ryan Dunn still on the board. A lot of interesting names, right? And so I think, yeah, go ahead.
A question for you, Albert. Does it make sense for them to maybe go with the RSCI bet and go Isaiah Collier, even though they took Bob Carrington?
Okay, so this is my soapbox, right? Where I get to unload the clip here. But the thing with Collier is I've got to see him play live. I saw him a year plus ago at the Nike Hoop Summit. Got to see him play for USC. Literally stood 12 inches away from him on the floor. Got to watch him warm up a bunch of times. There was a time they were in Westwood to play UCLA. He was in warmups. I watched him with my own 2 eyeballs miss over 10 3-point jump shots in a row. And I was standing there and I asked myself, what the hell am I watching? was what I was watching. But to his credit, I do want to say Collier, when he came back after injury, he did play at a much better pace. I think early on in the season, he had, I think he felt like he had a lot to prove. Obviously, Bronny James was on that team, Boogie Ellis was on that team, and maybe he felt like he had to come in and really kind of grab the reins and go crazy. But I think after he came back from injury, he showed a more tempered, more measured game. It didn't feel like he was going a million miles per hour anymore. But we've heard in kind of, oh, here's the pick. I'm sorry. Okay, the Wizards are taking Keyshawn George from Miami.
Hey, let's go.
Wow. So this is a stab to the heart for me. Clearly, I had the Knicks. The Knicks had the pick at 24. I love Keyshawn George. They trade the pick, and Washington takes Keyshawn George. Now, this is an interesting one though, because this kind of still goes with my French idea, because Keyshawn George played in France, right, before coming over to Miami, so he speaks French. So this is great. This is fantastic.
There you go. And mandatory French lessons for anyone who's not from that region of the world in the Wizards building.
This is a really great pick. If I can really quickly with Keyshawn, just the thing with him, and we've already talked about it a ton, but with Keyshawn, it's like everything you guys said, right? Late growth spurt. I know the concerns with him. Let's talk the concerns, right? He's a little bit skinnier, right? He needs to continue to work on his frame. He's a ground-bound athlete. He doesn't really have much vertical pop at all to speak of. I think he's got to continue to work on his finishing at the rim. He showed like tiny flashes of shot making in the mid-range, but the calling card with him is the three-point shooting. He's got deep range on the jumper. He hit over 40% from three on good volume too. I think he took like 163s this season. I think I'm kind of just going off the top of my head here, but also shot it pretty well from the free throw line. I know he didn't take a lot of them. Volume was low, but the thing with Keyshawn is when you watch him on the floor, I was talking to a scout, and he went to go see Keyshawn. I don't remember who they were playing exactly, but it was like halftime, and Keyshawn hadn't even scored the ball yet. But he texted me. He was like, number one, Keyshawn is gigantic, and number two, he's been the best player on the floor, and he hasn't even scored yet. And I think that speaks to the type of value that he can bring onto like a basketball court, because of course he can shoot, and he's going to bring that shooting gravity, but the feel that he plays with and the way that he can influence the game, I think is really interesting. I think if he can continue to develop his size, maybe his athleticism, and he can be one of these guys who can go grab a rebound, initiate some early offense, right, with his shooting gravity, I think he becomes a really interesting player. And Ignacio, as you mentioned, the Wizards, after the trade they made today, they don't have that logjam at wing anymore. And so to bring in Keyshawn into this scenario, into this situation, and it looks like they're trying to build this nice young roster, I really like the opportunity that he's going to get. I think it's a great fit. Any thoughts from you, Paige?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm glad, he's off the board. I'm glad he, still went in the first round. I think with Keyshawn too, like you don't need him to be like a high caliber athlete by any means. Like he just does so many things that can impact the game, that can kind of, move your eyes away from him not being athletic, right? So I think with the Wizards, giving him, a great role, like he's actually going to have a role that he can slot into and fill for the Wizards is really going to help him.
Yeah. And with that said, now my New York Knickerbockers are on the clock. I don't know if they're going to make these picks or if they're going to keep them, knowing Leon Rose and Worldwide West and this front office that we have. They like making trades at the back end of the first round. We'll see. But I know I'm the Knicks expert here, but nobody wants to hear me just cry and whine and go crazy. Actually, no, I have nothing to cry about. Our team is fantastic now, and we just added Mikal Bridges. So maybe I'm just too used to saying that, and that's just programmed in me. But
force of habit.
Exactly. Ignacio, if you can speak to this, who do you think the Knicks are targeting here? Because this Knicks roster, after the moves that they've made and the season that they just had, they're in a really interesting position. And obviously, with the cap situation and with all the money that they have coming on the books now, it's going to get interesting, right? Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be kind of a free agent type situation. Some of your thoughts on who you think the Knicks could be looking at here?
So quickly, Woj just tweeted that the Knicks are planning to make the picks at 25 and 26. So it's going to be back-to-back picks for them. They have, of course, they have Isaiah Hartenstein coming off the books. We don't know if he's going to resign or not. We don't know how, with adding Mikal Bridges and with OG Anunoby resigning, we don't know if the money really works to get Isaiah back. So one of the picks might be a big, because we don't know also how available Mitchell Robinson will be. So one of the picks might be a big here. Kyle Filipowski is the top guy on our board. And then there's a bit of a drop-off, but if you want a guy who's going to play with a ton of energy, who has a tremendous motor, and who knows his limitations, but also knows what he does really well, Adam Bona is there. But obviously that might be a reach, considering that we have him like at 37. But I just think that with that motor is a guy that he's a Thibs guy with that motor. Then you,
not to burst your bubble, but I think you'll like, I think you'll like it. I think you guys will like it.
Okay. I'm not going to spoil it. But on our mock draft, right, the one that we posted today, we had the Knicks taking Ryan Dunn at 24 and Baylor Shireman at 25. And I think the rationale there was, this Knicks team, with all the pieces that they have now, of course, like the center situation is what it is, but adding guys who can come off the bench, who are a little bit older, a little bit more mature, who can kind of come in and play right away and offer some impact, I think was the rationale that we had. Obviously, with Shireman being 23, he's going to be 24 in September. A guy like Ryan Dunn, who played 2 years at Virginia, and with his defensive playmaking ability, I think a lot of us thought that, Tibbs would just fall in love with that type of guy. But Paige, if you can, without, spoiling the pick, some guys that you think make sense for the Knicks, because they're going to make 2 picks here.
Yeah, I think at 25, you mentioned Baylor Shireman, Ryan Dunn. I think a combo between the both would work well for them. Getting a little bit of shooting, plus size on the perimeter, can defend, and also with the Knicks too. Like, they're really loading up the wings, right? I don't think Hartenstein, I don't think they'll resign him by any means. So that but if you have 4 guys that are 6'8", with Jalen Brunson that can space the floor, can defend, you're looking pretty good, honestly. And Albert, you have to be excited, honestly, for where they're going. So
yeah, you see this smile right here is because I spoiled the pick and I love it.
Oh, okay.
I try not to.
So it looks like Adam Silver is at the podium. The pick is in for the Knicks. At 25, the Knicks select. Oh, there it is. Hakeem Dottie. Oh, Frank Ntilikina redemption. Love it.
They shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence, in the same paragraph.
Frederick Weiss redemption by the New York Knicks. I absolutely love it. Ignacio, you are our international expert. Before we make the switch over, if you can give us a breakdown of this pick and what this means for the New York Knicks.
I wrote about Dadier for our draft guide. Dadier, I called him one of the synergy darlings of this draft cycle, because when you look at the points per possession in shots off the dribble, catch and shoot, layups, you name the type of shot, you name the type of play, Dadier was one of the highest rated guys among wings and forwards. So he was on a small role, on a limited role for Rasha Farm, playing against grown men for the reigning champion of the German league. But he played so well in that role, and he was able to really play off ball dominant guards like Juan Nunez, who will hopefully get picked at some point in this draft. The notion is that Dadier will want to come right away, will want to get right away to the NBA. But for the Knicks, with all the wings that they have and with all the players on the roster, I wonder if that's going to be the case, or if they want to stash him one year. But absolutely great get at this point in the draft for the Knicks, because I think the offensive versatility, and like I mentioned when I was talking about him previously, he has the body, he has the I think the smoothness, the fluidity. I just love the pick, and I think it's we tend to think about upside swings as like raw guys Daddy is an upside swing, but he's a really polished guy, in my opinion. So yeah, I congratulations to you, Albert.
I love the pick. I'm really excited about it. As you mentioned, Ignacio, it might be a situation where he doesn't come over right away. But look, as a New York Knicks fan, we loved Frankie Smokes. We're sad it didn't work out. We hated Frederick Weiss. And so to have Dadier come in and redeem all of that is really, really exciting for us. And with that being said, guys, this was so fun. We've never done this together, the three of us. But this is great. I think it's time we switch over and have our next group of hosts come on in. But this was a lot of fun. This is great. Go draft.
We should do it more often.
We should.
Go draft.
Wow. Just wow, Albert. Always something special with you.
Had to leave on a heater. Bye, guys.
I don't think I appreciate cocky Albert. It's kind of gonna piss me off. I think I'm over it.
So I'm a little lower on Pacome than most of you guys, but I still like him, especially in this range, and especially for the Knicks, who just sent out 5 first-round picks. I think this is a really good long-term play by them, because I think regardless of who they picked here, they weren't going to play anyways next year. But 2-3 years from now, I think there's a ton of upside there with him.
Yeah, I would have loved him to Boston. Would have loved him in a couple places. I think he's a great long-term play, like you're saying. I think this is a great value. If you're looking down the road, you're looking to get yourself a little breathing room and just slowly develop them. So, yeah, for a team like New York, like Metcalf, that was a great point. You're saying, you're not going to have a lot of first-round picks moving forward. So you might as well get yourself a little high upside swing here and see what else they do.
Okay, so it looks like 26. The Knicks are trading it to the Thunder. Don't know who the pick is yet. So who are we thinking the Thunder traded up for?
Oh gosh, is this going to be Filipowski?
Is this Filipowski?
That's what first thing that came to mind. I think that after taking the swing on Topic, that if you really would like to fill a different need for a team that wants to win, I think they're just finding those last pegs to fit into this final product they want. I think that Flip would really work for them without being overtaxed.
If we mocked Filipowski in our final mock draft, but it's to a different team, is it half a point?
Yeah, I think we get like half a gold star.
Count it.
Some really interesting names left on the board.
There are
at the end of this first round, and that's why I think this 2-day format, everyone's gonna look at tomorrow and be like, this rocks, because I think teams are gonna like go home or sit in the office and be like, there's a lot of talent. Like there's big names left, and we're running out of picks in the first round. So I'm intrigued.
So aside from Filipowski, would a name like a Tyler Smith, a Baylor Shireman, a Kevin McCullough, a Dembona, Enrique Freeman, would any of those make sense, or would just again another long-term home run swing with a Trent Flowers, a Johnny Furphy, an Isaiah Collier make more sense?
I'm even wondering if Ryan Dunn could be in the mix here. If you're looking about
defense, rebounding, physicality, toughness.
If your second unit has Ryan Dunn, Lou Dort, and Caruso, probably not going to score a ton, but you might not give up any buckets. So I don't know. There's a lot of directions they could go. So this is going to OKC. The pick's coming in right now.
Correct. All right. So I have Silver walking out. Who is it?
Dylan Jones, baby. Friend of the program. Let's go.
Let's go.
Dylan. Yes.
Wow.
Everyone else could eat one.
Wow.
Those people that put him at 58. Rowan, what do you think?
I love this. I got a chance to go long on Dylan Jones earlier in the season. I highlighted that he's not going to be playing the ball dominant role he did in his time in college, but as a guy who can come in, keep whatever you are running on offense humming to give you new wrinkles, this is great. I think that the Thunder getting Jones here shows that they value what he's going to bring to their bench this year. This isn't a project. You don't have to wonder about what he's going to bring. He gives your offense off of the bench some new wrinkles. This is awesome. I think that's great for him. I'm really happy for him because he's going to be on a team that wants to be good. He's helped influence winning basketball. 3 thumbs up if it was possible.
I'm right there with him. I think you said it beautiful. I think this is a nice little wrinkle now. You get we were saying some team's gonna fall in love with this kid. Some team's gonna love the uniqueness he gives you. I think Dylan with OKC is a fantastic little asset now. You play him a little different roles. That team's building a lot of headaches. And what I'm saying is like now they can do a lot of different stuff to attack you. You get like an offensive Swiss Army knife off the bench now. You got Caruso, you got Chet, like all the studs they have. It's a fun one. I like it. Metcalf, you're on the board.
It's just another kind of testament to they have a very specific type of player, and they don't care about positional backlog or any of that. It's, do you think the game at a really high level? Yeah, cool. Come on over. And that's exactly what they've done in every single draft, and especially in this draft where they got 2 of the best thinkers and problem solvers in this draft in Topic and Dylan Jones. So roster construction wise, it's a little funky, but they don't care. They're not drafting to fill a specific need. They're drafting for culture. And it's a really interesting pick. I like the fit in terms of personality and play style. I think it makes a lot of sense. Really fun. Oh, and it looks like the Thunder are sending 5 second-round picks to the Knicks.
So what? That gives them 364 left.
Yeah, so I think they're down to double-digit picks now in terms of future draft capital.
Hey, I'm pumped for Dylan. I'm pumped for that fit. I really like it. I think that's a nice. The Thunder just left with a great weapon off the bench, and then you're gonna have Topic in a year. Like it, this roster's just gonna be so fun. So I like it a lot.
Okay, where do we think Minnesota goes?
Let's focus for Metcalf before you're about to explode. What are you thinking here?
I would love Bailey Sharman or Tyler Kolek. I'm not sure Kolek makes any sense after the Dillingham pick necessarily, but Mike Conley is still 37 years old, so having multiple point guards going forward isn't a bad thing. But they really struggled with athleticism and rim pressure, especially in the playoffs. So does a home run swing like in Isaiah Collier, or arguably the best slasher in the country last year in Terrence Shannon Jr. make sense?
Does Ryan Dunn make sense to you, or do they just have too many off? You need some shooting.
Yeah, they have Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Clark for those roles. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they're good. Watch it be Ryan Dunn now. That'd be incredible.
It's gonna be Furphy, and you're gonna be like, I'm gonna be like, are you gonna be okay? You're like having a night. AJ Johnson goes first round back up.
I am like, having a night.
I am having a night.
Also, told y'all.
I don't want Baylor to go here. I want him to go in 2-3 picks.
I really think Minnesota's going to target an athlete here and someone who can get downhill. And Collier and Shannon were the 2 names that I've heard coming into tonight. I don't think Collier necessarily makes sense with the Dillingham pick earlier.
No, I think Terrence makes a ton of sense if, they like him, everything checks out. Athleticism, gets downhill, can go a little versatility. What about you, Ron?
Yeah, I think obviously Metcalf, you're a lot more plugged in on their needs. I think that I at least see some of the pure shooting that Furphy or even a guy like Tyler Smith could bring. At the same time, I don't know if they totally fit with the rest of the team construction that they've built, the rest of the identity. So they'll have to split the difference, whether it's the shooting or that like downhill creation. Collier, whether he goes here in a few picks or later, I think will be a better value now that he's getting to this part of the draft. I think that just Dillingham did blow up a lot of the thoughts that I have, and I'm piecing it back together in the most exciting way possible.
Okay. Well, looks like pick is in. Looks like Adam Silver's walking out. Rucker, you can announce it. I think you're a little ahead of me.
The Minnesota Timberwolves select Terrence Shannon Jr.
There it is.
Metcalf, come on, we got to get a little more of that. You like it?
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And, just for context purposes, Shannon was accused and then found not guilty of a rape charge earlier this year. So everything's cleared legally. Teams obviously seem to be comfortable with it. And the buzz is that he was rising a lot recently and was really impressing. In terms of just getting downhill, getting to the rim, and kind of being a really disruptive defender, he was awesome this year. I'm still not sure I buy the shot. Does a lot of the kind of inconsistencies on the margin when he's not having a usage rate of 30 plus, do those get better because he's just able to redirect that energy elsewhere? In terms of just an athlete who can get downhill, get to the bucket, score, draw fouls off the bench, I'm not sure there's a better one in the draft at this point.
It's a lot of an infusion of offensive energy going with TSJ and Dillingham, and neither guy, as you're saying, is expected to start. They may have seen some of the issues that they had maybe against Dallas, maybe just in general of where they see the team going, Conley getting older. And yeah, I think that it reads to me a little bit as not a next year. They know a lot of what their rotation will be in spots next year, but yeah, Shannon should be able to have a good impact in a much more specific role for a team that won't need him to carry anything close to the load that he had at Illinois.
Where are you guys at with his playmaking? Because he had a usage of about 28 on the year, assist rate under 14. When he gets downhill, is he too one-dimensional, or in an NBA context when there are shooters, when there's a rim runner like Gobert, or other versatile scoring bigs like Cat and Nas, do we think that becomes a little more effective than what it was in that Illinois context?
I think he's going to be nasty getting down. No. I was trying to. I didn't know if Rowan was about to go. I think you're just wanting him for the physicality. The playmaking, I think he had so much freedom to do whatever he wanted at Illinois, and it was like, go get what you want. But Adam Silver's announcing right now, so
Denver or Phoenix.
So,
Kolek.
Ryan Dunn.
Wow.
Virginia. Shannon's going to be great for them. I'll finish that thought. I like that pick. I think it's a good one. Dunn's been buzzing, folks. I think the vibe was been that he's really been shooting it in workouts, and if you're really shooting it in workouts, that's pretty much the only thing holding you back. Phoenix needs a lot. They just need depth. They need guys that can play. They don't need guys that are going to be offensive point. Like, they just need depth pieces, and I think Dunn's going to be a nice piece for them. I think he could come in early, and if you're asking Ryan Dunn, hey, can you go out there and play good defense and get the ball to Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, hopefully Bradley Beal if he's on the court, I think he's going to do a great job of that.
Yeah, he gets a play finish off all of those guys. What they saw from Dunn, they're not trying to make him into something he's not. They're going to really accentuate his strengths. You can let him loose. They run enough lineups with Durant playing in more of like a traditional like power forward position, but it gives them at least a little bit more size if they want to around Nurkic. I think that Dunn is going to definitely help them for some of the defensive things they want to do, no duh, but like even to cover up for Beal as he gets older, it gives Booker and Durant just a bit less energy to expend on that end. And getting him in the first round instead of like having to gamble on some kind of second round contract, like that keeps them in team control for this entire Suns run that they're going to have with this core. So I think this is a fascinating and fun pick for a team that really speaks like they're contending and can now say it with a bit more confidence it's done on their team.
I think you're getting the best version. Go ahead, Metcalf.
No, you got it.
I think you're getting the. I mean, I wrote about him earlier in the year. He's one of the best defensive wings I've ever evaluated. Like it's that special. I think he's just a nightmare on the defensive side of the ball for opposing players, opposing teams. You just have to get something offensively, and I think Rowan brings up a great point. Like if he can be on the court with those guys, he's not going to have to do anything offensively. He's just going to be a play finisher. He's going to be a hustle guy. Like they're going to let him be him. And that's exactly what we're talking about with fit and everything. Dunn, I thought, going to a playoff team has a shot to play it a long time because he's that special, that smart on the defensive side of the ball. It's just you have to figure out how can you keep him on the court because of his offense. And pretty easy with Phoenix. They're going to have plenty of guys that can score. They just need guys to help out on the defensive side. So I love it.
Well, and then just even offensively, I think he's a guy that can help just add some athleticism and cutting and offensive rebounding and can kind of hopefully play off of the gravity of those other three guys. So is he ever going to shoot it? I don't know. I would lean towards no. But in that context, I'm not sure he ever has to. All right. 29th pick, Utah.
Silver
is this where we
already?
think
Jeez.
Is this where we think they take a swing on a point guard? We had previously kind of mocked and thought about Topic at 10. Is this a Collier swing? Is this a Kolek pick?
He just announced it. Isaiah Collier.
There we go. The false stops.
Can't figure out my thoughts. Rowan, if you got any thoughts, go for it. You wrote about him this year.
Yeah, I did. And I think that it's really fascinating considering him next to Keontae because they're not different enough in size that I think it fits naturally there, but they have pretty complementary skills in terms of each can get downhill in ways that create offense for themselves and others. I think that the second half of the season, Collier is what the Jazz are hoping for. They know that he won't come in to be the point of attack defender that they probably want out of someone else on that team. The shooting is something that needs to improve. At 29, for a team that could trade Markkanen, that could instead push chips more into the center, I think that this makes sense in that range. As I brought up, letting him slip out of the first round would have surprised me. And I think that the Jazz let the board fall as they wanted, let it fall for a position that they needed to infuse some youth into. So I'm a fan. I think this is a good spot for Collier to start to build back up maybe where he was before and to just have a nice cushion to the beginning of his NBA career.
I love the value.
Yeah.
I love the value.
Incredible.
I don't, for all of the questions that we've had, I did not see him falling to 29. I think if that's your second first round pick, heck of a year. You get him and Cody, those are two high upside guys if things fall into place. And then you have that draft class from last year. I've heard good things about Taylor Hendricks for this year. You get Sensabaugh going. Utah's building something. This is what Danny Ainge does. He just, like Rowan just said, he lets the board fall to him and he just, okay, take it. Let's go. We'll figure everything out. So I love it. I think it's another great year for Utah. And even with Collier's questions, I still think there's a way in which he could really unlock that consistency and be a talented piece. I just am trying to figure out, like, if he does click and Keontae's there, I'm trying to figure out how that works, but you might just get some dangerous versatility with both of them, you know, with how quick Collier is and how dangerous Keontae can be from outside. So,
well, I'm still not sure that Keontae is necessarily a true point guard, and I think
right. I agree.
Collier for sure is. I think their way of offensive creation is really different too, where Keontae's a little more perimeter based and Collier's just get downhill over and over and over again. But this is value. Just incredible value for someone who came out of high school as the number 1 overall recruit, as someone who at the start of the year, some places had at number 1 on their boards. To get him at 29, it's a heck of a swing. There's some real talent, real upside there with him. And the Jazz, that organization, seems to be taking the long view on a lot of these guys and being patient. So I love the fit. I love the swing. It makes a ton of sense, especially at the end of the first round. With that, the Boston Celtics, last pick of the first round on the clock. Rucker, what are you hoping for?
The world champion Boston Celtics.
Stop living in the past. Move on. My God.
So Stevens every year likes to take the guy I don't want. So I'm expecting this to be Phil Palski. I'd kind of be shocked if they stayed here, but I think Baylor Shireman's a perfect, type of player that they would love to have. I would imagine they would have liked Shireman, but they're shocked probably he's still on the board. They probably were thinking we're trading out if we didn't get him. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting ways. I don't think Furphy would be looking really good in Maine. Pick us in. Kolek, I don't see, him and Pritchard fighting in the locker rooms. I don't know. There's just a lot of names where I think Shireman makes a lot of sense with this roster and where they're at right now, and they're going to try to keep contending. So I don't know. Rowan, you got? Oh, go ahead.
Is Hauser a free agent this summer, or is it?
Yeah, but they're trying to do. I've been told they're going to try to do everything to re-sign him, but I get it. But I'm just wondering if you're trying to almost get like another version of Hauser, where you're kind of just doubling down on that. And this is where I think you got to kind of balance, like, okay, do we want youth or do we want a guy that's potentially ready to help us early? So I don't know. I like Shireman here. I kind of shocked how many bigs came off the board pretty early, but maybe Bona's there. I think that might be a little early though with the names on the board.
Rowan, what are you feeling?
It wouldn't shock me either for like Kolek or Shireman, because the Celtics don't have an issue stacking at positions. I mean, we saw like White and Holiday might conventionally be thought of as playing the same role on a team. They just want a title, letting them develop chemistry. The Jays, I'm sure, Rucker, you've heard enough that you never want to hear anything and won't have to hear anything again about their overlap. So as much as Hauser and Shireman could overlap, I think that it makes too much sense for what he brings to play a lot of winning basketball.
Yeah, I wasn't so much worried about an overlap with Hauser, more so as a replacement.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'm there. I
because
thought that would
those
have
are
been
going to be
interesting.
two very different prices on a team that's going to be very expensive.
It helps you with the negotiating table for sure. If you're like, I don't know. I just think that's a pick that makes a lot of sense. I thought Pacome would have made a ton of sense for them, of just if they were like, hey, we're gonna stash you and bring you over down the road, like basically what the Knicks just did. I just would really like. I think Shireman makes a ton of sense there. I do think Phil Palski would make some sense if they're buying in on it, just because Porzingis is going to be out early. All right.
Looks like Silver's walking out to the podium. Rucker, I'll give you the honors.
Baylor Shireman.
Here we go.
Now I have to hold my breath and hope that he doesn't come on the Woj doesn't pop out of the corner and be like, "We have a trade." I tweeted this, but they need to make it so that Woj walks out. Can you imagine how electric it would be if he just came out of nowhere and was like, "Oh,
rises up out of the floor"?
That would be so awesome. I'd be like, "Oh, shake up Woj." Oh man, I like the pick. I think that's a great fit. He's another dangerous guy you get off the bench to that could either light it up from deep, take a couple shots that Missoula will pull him right away and say, don't ever do it again. I don't know, Metcalf, what did you think? I thought there's a shot if he went to either Minnesota or Boston that, we'd be happy.
Yeah, I would have loved him in Minnesota. I'm honestly kind of surprised he fell here.
Yeah.
But because you couldn't find a bad thing about him throughout the pre-draft stuff. Insane shooting range and insane shooting confidence. So some of the shot selection stuff will make you pull your hair out, but really adept playmaker, good rebounder. And I think in a lesser role with less responsibility, I think a lot of those kind of decision-making concerns, if you want to call them that, get cleaned up immediately because there's just so much versatility. And I think he really knows who he is as a player. He's obviously older, so slotting in, trying to fit into a rotation who just won the NBA championship, you're going to have to play more of a role. And as a tertiary playmaker, solid rebounder, an off-ball shooter, he feels like a guy who can contribute really quickly in his career. And, if Sam Hauser gets too expensive, then you just kind of wave him goodbye and Shireman can step right in.
Yeah, I think you're just getting great depth.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what Rowan said. Like, you're at a point you're like, who fits with this team? Who fits with this roster? I also think this is a team that loves ball movement when they're playing good, and then they get ISO. But I think they're at their best with ball movement and high feel guys. And Shireman's one of those guys that could come in and do a lot of stuff. In a weird way, I wonder if they keep they keep Hauser, and then some games it's just like, okay, Shireman comes in. I also think he's got a little bit of he's competitive, and I think he'll be ready to go to war with that team. So I love the fit. I think it's a great addition. I thought they might have traded out if Shireman went off the board. So hell yeah, first pick Brad Stevens has ever made in the first round. I think he's traded out every year. First year, I think it's the first time he's ever stayed and made a pick in the first round.
Oh, well, look at that. Making history.
Yeah.
God, the guy wins a title and he gets all cocky.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to trade this. I feel it different. But I think now you're seeing the importance of depth across the league.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's trying to get a lot of rotation versatility at that position. It's going to be interesting.
Well, with that, the first round is done. And we have to wait a whole day until round 2. This is wild. Not used to it.
Feels
kind of good, though. So looking at some of the names who didn't come off the board, according to the No Ceilings Collective big board, our last one, the best available, Kyle Filipowski, Tyler Smith, Tyler Kolek, Johnny Furphy, Kevin McCullough, KJ Simpson, Jonathan Mogbo, Adem Bona, AJ Mitchell. Are there any names tonight that you were really surprised didn't go in the first round?
I think Kolek surprises me only from the fits as it started to fall into the 20s. It seemed to make some sense. Of course, there are trades that are going to happen, even though Phoenix were indicating on all public channels that they might want him. Obviously, they went in a different direction. I'm a little surprised that a team didn't trust the way he can run an offense and want to get him to play a backup point guard role. I think that he's not going to have to wait long. I think it'll be pretty quickly whether a team trades up or not for him. But that's a name that surprised me. I mean, regardless of how my personal board might differ,
right there with the Kolek's a little shocker. I think Filipowski's, despite kind of tumbling or despite the cooler pre-draft process, I still thought someone would bite. But this is also why I love the 2-day format, because now everyone's gonna be like, do we like Filipowski? Can we go trade up to try to get him? It's if you have that first pick, you're ringing the dinner bell. What about you, Metcalf? Anyone surprise you, shock you? I mean, Furphy's still on the board, right?
Yeah, Kolek was the big one, and so is Furphy, especially since there was a lot of wavering with him of was he going to go back or stay in? And once he stayed in, it kind of seemed like he was going to be a first-round lock. So I think the upside is still there, but clearly teams aren't necessarily convinced. So those are the two big ones. We kind of heard Filipowski was falling. Still surprised that a team didn't necessarily pull the trigger late in the first, in the 20s. When OKC traded up, we thought that kind of made sense given some of their needs. but really interesting stuff. Ton of movement. Favorite pick of the first round? And then we'll call it a night.
I'm not gonna love saying this out loud, but I'll be unbiased. I thought the Lakers getting Dalton Connect at 17 was a robbery.
Yeah.
I just thought it was unbelievable value. I thought this age thing where Gavoni comes on the screen and says teams are he's falling because of he's older. I just think it's a bunch of crap. I think it's so dumb. I'm sorry, and I can't believe No Ceilings has me backing up the Lakers now. I've never thought I would see the day. I think it's so dumb that teams are just like, well, he's old, so he can't get better. Or Dalton Connect is a late bloomer. He's a guy that keeps growing every year. He's dominant. Transfer from Northern Colorado. Maxwell wrote an unbelievable piece about him. He's nasty. He's versatile, and I think he should have been a top 10 guy. You can have the questions you want about his defense, but guys like that don't come around often, where they can get downhill, dunk on you. They've got great athleticism. They can shoot off the movement. Tennessee ran a play this year that was unguardable because they just would run him to the corner as fast as possible, and he'd shoot a three going out of bounds. Like,
you think JJ Redick will like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think he was given like fist pumps and high fives in the background. This is my first pick. Is I basically get a 6'6" sharpshooter with bounce. Like, I don't know. I just didn't get it. So I thought it was a fantastic pick for them, and made me sick.
Rowan, what about you?
For me, and I know that Nick and I have like a special affinity for him, but Deron Holmes going to Denver, it makes sense they had to trade up. I think that it was one of the most publicized promises that I've seen in my short time following the draft. And that's fine. And it shows
everybody
they really wanted him. And if I had heard it, with my intel, it's very in the know. But from a basketball fit, it works really seamlessly for what the Nuggets want to do. Jokic can only do so much. He does so much, and he can only do so much. Even if you're getting Holmes just off of the bench, he's going to spell in the regular season. He's going to be able to play a little bit out in some of their wider spread sets that they want to run. He can play next to Jokic. He can play next to Gordon. You put him next to Porter Jr. in just some tall, we're going to shoot over you, force you to get out of your system sets. The Nuggets needed to start beefing up the bench. That was really clear. I know, Metcalf, you were probably celebrating it, how tired they were at the end of Game 7. The fact that they're up 20 and just could not close at home. They just need talented, warm bodies, and they couldn't have found a better fit than Holmes for this, and they haven't had a reliable backup center in a while. And now they have that, plus a guy who can play next to Jokic. Yeah, this one was pretty clearly, besides my own personal affinity, a really clear best pick for me.
Tyler Metcalf, you're up now. Let's hear it. What does the mad scientist think about his favorite pick? I'll let you pick Rob if you want, but
yeah, I'm going to put on my homer, just wear my homerism on full display here. I love the Rob move. It makes a ton of sense. Gives them exactly what they didn't need. All of the concerns with him, the reason that I loved him on the Spurs is exactly why I love him on the Timberwolves. I don't care about the defensive issues because they have elite defenders across the board with size. You can insulate that stuff. Elite shot maker, offensive creator. It's just something they didn't have, and a really high upside long-term point guard option going forward. And then also, I just want to give a quick shout out. AJ Johnson, first round. Look at that, folks. Look at that. I'm not a moron.
Grouchy Metcalf last night, and now we have Giddy Metcalf. I'm terrified for what day two Metcalf would be.
But speaking of day two, this will wrap up day one, round one coverage. We will be back tomorrow live covering the entire second round of the NBA draft tomorrow afternoon. Bizarre start time, but what can you do? If you want to read up or catch a podcast or see a video breakdown of whatever player your team drafted, head over to NoCeilingsNBA.com. I guarantee there's some sort of written piece on them over there. They'll also be covered in our draft guide, which you can find at NoCeilingsNBA.com. You can find them on YouTube at NoCeilingsNBA. But excited for tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. A lot of really interesting players and fits left. But until tomorrow, see ya.